3 o'clock on this Tuesday afternoon, or as we call it during football season on the Postgame show, Brewsday. Welcome aboard. Alongside Elijah Campbell, I'm Jay Phillips. Our good friend Ryan Brewer is in the house, the former Gamecock running back, wide receiver, kick returner, punt returner, special teams gunner, team captain, husband, father, business owner, music fan. Speaking of music, Patrick Davis is going to join us later. He and I were hoping to do some crosstalk.
Okay.
But he has been delayed with his visit until after you leave, unless you want to hang around.
Well, we'll see.
Okay. I mean,
I got some things to do, But
I don't really want you to, but I just, if you...
I thought you didn't want me to. It was just kind of like I'm pretty sure Patrick didn't either. PD's play, Brewers there. That's all right. Well, I'll do the next hour.
He said, oh, well, sure. Or something like that.
Well, good.
How you doing?
I'm doing fine, man. I'm glad that you have your power back, and I do as well.
Yeah, good. When'd you get yours? I got mine at 8:15 last night.
I got mine Saturday in time to see the ball game.
Man, lucky you, dude.
Good ball game.
That was a hell of a ball game.
I won't lie to you. I cranked the AC last night, so because the last 3 nights of sleep again were. I used a word yesterday with Elijah that I will not use on the radio because I like my job. They were bad. I was so hot.
You said sleep. You said the last 3 nights of sleep, and I think sleep might be a little bit of a stretch.
It's hard to sleep like that, but it is what it is.
But last night I cranked it down, had the ceiling fan. If my ceiling fan had a higher setting than high, like if it had helicopter,
if it had Arctic winds,
I would have set it to that. And I don't want to say that I got cold because that's not really accurate, but I appreciated the fact that I was like, all right. And I slept quite well, so that was good. But to those who are still without, I'm not trying to rub it in, believe me. And I do thank the folks at Dominion and the DOT for all they're doing. I mean, I get it. It's thankless.
I mean, just the linemen, what they're doing all day, the tree guy, everybody right now. It's, hats off to you. Thanks for the effort you're putting in. I know you're getting paid, but at the same time, well,
they're out there. There's overtime work, and they're working 18-hour days in some cases. So I get it, and we're still thinking so much about the folks up in North Carolina and the upstate of South Carolina who continue to dig out from what's going to be a tough time. But we got football this week, and I know you two as well. We're gonna, just like yesterday, we'll be blending the fun of sport with the seriousness of what's going on in life. Elijah is wearing a throwback replica Pete Rose jersey. He's a big Reds fan. Obviously, Ryan, we've known that you are a big Reds fan.
That was tough. Charlie Hustle's, that was a tough.
It is, and I later on I want to before you leave, I want both of you as Red fans to come in and we'll like Terry said. I think primarily we can talk about the baseball, but I forget if I texted you, Elijah. A friend of mine texted me last night about it. And I'm serious when I say this. I mean, I cover sports, but I'm a big sports fan. And you could probably throw some other people into the mix, like a Lance Armstrong. And he might be the only one that comes to mind. But the complicated and flawed existence and reality of Pete Rose may be the pinnacle of that type of personality and career and life in sports. Again, there may be others. I say Lance Armstrong, but Lance Armstrong doesn't really come close, even in his sport, for what he did to what Pete Rose was, because everything Pete Rose attained as an athlete, he did on his own.
We getting into this now or later?
No, but I'm just saying.
Okay. I'm trying to. Do I need to?
No, not
talk
yet.
about it because we can talk about it. But
I can keep. I could. No, we'll come back around to it. I would like to, but before you leave, we'll do some of that. And we talked about Dikembe Mutombo. Only what 58 years old. Mm-hmm. And what a wonderful
George Jefferson too
human being he was.
Right.
Who?
George Jefferson as well.
Sherman Helmsley.
I think so.
Oh no, I didn't see that.
I didn't see that either.
Yeah, I was texted that last night.
Oh no.
Oh wow.
Oh man.
Man, that's tough.
Yeah.
Did anybody watch the NFL game, Seattle and Detroit last night? You did not?
I saw the greatest broken tackle in the history of football from Kenneth Walker. I didn't watch the entire game, but I watched
that was amazing.
Pieces.
But there was a play in the game that I wanted to throw something at the TV because there was a sack by Seattle. I think it was Hall, comes in and gets Goff. He horse collars the heck out of him and brings him down. But he's inside the tackle box. So everyone, they're all going nuts. But the announcer's saying this is the rule. You can do that in the NFL. And I was really waiting for him to say the next thing to say, man, if they had it in college, South Carolina would have won against LSU. That's what I thought was going to be the next sentence coming out of there. And in my whole mind, and the rest of the night, all I could think was, why the hell don't we have the same freaking rules?
Well, I do. Now I agree. I agree with that, and that is an issue. Elijah and I have touched on that. Actually, there need to be some rule changes in college that adapt to the NFL,
especially.
And help me out. I can't remember, man. I'm old now. When you played college football, y'all had the NFL goalposts by then, right? The college goalpost went away before that.
I don't know.
I can't remember.
I don't think.
I think they went away. Somebody tell me when they went, because I'm not going to look it up right now. But
I think we had the same goalpost.
Yeah, you had the NFL goalpost by then. But things like, again, quarterback sacks in college count against his and the team's rushing total, whereas in the NFL it counts against the team's total pass yards. Because he was going back to pass.
I think they should have a separate section just for sack yards or kneel down yards or whatever. So that should be just a whole different stat.
Things like that. I don't disagree. Now, our good friend Michael Haney would push back on you about the Nussmeier horse collar and say you can't guarantee that Carolina would have won because it would have changed what LSU was going to do.
Yeah, but I already know what happened. So yes,
all right, I'm just telling you. I'll
find him.
Okay. Call Haney and
we'll talk.
He'll tell you. Anyway, already asked you how you doing, so let's just get into it right now. No game last weekend, but I will ask you the questions that Elijah and I posed to the audience yesterday. Do you believe that Kentucky showed a blueprint for South Carolina to beat Mississippi? And then B, do you believe that South Carolina can match a level of mental intensity that I believe Lane Kiffin is going to be looking for, because their backs are now very much against the wall with a trip to Columbia followed by a trip to Baton Rouge. It may not be a technical must-win game, but it is a you-better-not-lose game.
All right, well, first off, yes, I think what Kentucky did out there defensively, showing that the pressure, and I really don't believe their defense is as good as our defense, the pressure they could get and how they could slow them down, because this was the high-flying offense, clipboard-flying offense that I believe they're going to put up 35 at least against Kentucky. And they showed
I told Elijah, I said, they'll score 30.
They got the stats. Yeah. They had a heck of a lot more stats than Kentucky did, except for the one that mattered the most.
Yep.
But what they did on offense was just methodical. They didn't, and they didn't give up a ton of pressures, which kind of makes me feel pretty good. He had time in the pocket and connected some passes, able to run the ball at times, but it shows they ran the clock. They got the time possession. They got that going a little bit. Just were run the clock, trying to slow the game down, because Ole Miss want to come at you flying. I don't know if we have that capability of slowing the game down, because we are a momentum team, and if we get behind the sticks, which we are probably the worst in maybe all of college. I'm pretty sure we're the worst in the SEC, but maybe all of college of tackles for loss on offense. We got to find a way to run the ball on them. But yeah, I 100% watching that game. It was like, man, this is how it is a blueprint. This is how it can be done. Now, at the same time, their backs against the wall coming in here. Yes, they're going to give it everything they have. That's the whole one of the premises that really frustrate me. If you step on that field, you better give it everything.
Yeah, that's one thing you should expect.
I agree. So it's like if you didn't last game, you better not play this game. Mm-hmm. Like I want to kick your ass for that. You know, so that's people have moments. People have time. I had some games where I didn't play as well as I could have for mental reasons or physical reasons or whatever, but I still gave it everything I had. So it's not like I'm going to do more now because we lost to Kentucky. No.
Yeah, I get it.
But now this is a different age of players and different, where maybe they take this as, oh, man, we thought we could walk in there and because we were just smoking everybody until we got to this, to Kentucky. Now we got to pick it up a little bit.
And Ryan raises a point, Elijah, that you and I didn't get to yesterday in terms of Kentucky's ability to run the football. We did see that firsthand when Kentucky played South Carolina, that they abandoned the pass, but they did run the ball effectively. It's just that South Carolina's defense made sure they only kicked field goals. And, again, the second field goal was kind of Carolina's fault anyway in terms of giving the ball right back to them.
Gifted field position.
But that I agree with Ryan on that one. Carolina will have to make certain that they find ways to run the football. And I do wonder with Shane saying today, well, Lenoris and Rocket were out there. Wouldn't tell you I'm paraphrasing. They're probably not 100%. Getting better every day.
Said Lenoris. Looked good.
Looked good. Yeah. Well, the quote I have was, we're in pretty good shape. That's all I'll say.
What's he supposed to say?
He
looks great.
Yes.
Or he's horrible. He's hurt. He's not playing. You play down the middle of the field. Yes, you got to play these mind games.
Yeah. No, I get it. And we'll know tomorrow night.
But are they going to prepare different? I guess a little bit.
I think you have to. That's what I was going to lead up to. Is I think you've got to get Robbie and Oscar and Juwan and those guys a little bit more repetition.
I'm talking about Ole Miss preparing different.
If you're Ole Miss,
versus Robbie versus Sellers.
Blueprint's kind of the same, right? These are guys that can kill you on their feet. You want to keep them in the pocket and make them have to dissect you.
I think that's the best thing that Robbie did last games. He showed that he can throw the ball as well. So now it's like they're very similar skill sets now, and they're not running different plays. So, I don't think I understand that you want to not give it out there, but Rocket's got to be able to go. Run the ball. He's got to go, and he's got to be 100% where he's breaking tackles.
Yeah. You can't be – here's the thing about the Kentucky win against Ole Miss that I don't find that South Carolina can get away with if this happens Saturday, and that's getting 11 rushing attempts either stopped at the line of scrimmage or for a loss. I don't think you survive 23% of your runs doing that because that's what happened at Kentucky. I don't think you survive if on, design run plays, you're only 3.3 yards a carry because you do rely on the run more than Kentucky did. Kentucky, like Brock Vandegrift, to his credit, stood back there and made about 3 throws in this game that helped sustain drives that they needed every single one of those points to end up winning that game. I think that's the one thing. I think Kentucky did a lot of good things defensively to at least slow down Ole Miss and get them off the field on third downs. Ole Miss went 1 for 10 on third down. And when I asked Debo Williams today, what do you find replicable with what Kentucky did, with what you can do? He just said getting off the field on third down. Beat off the field on third down, they're in good shape. And I think that's the case. I just don't think you can have that same type of rushing production Kentucky had against them and still survive because there were a lot of lucky elements.
Let's say, 4th and 7 and you're getting, 67, 70-yard play. That's not going to happen at all ever again. But at the same time, I think, Kentucky hasn't shown against us, against Georgia, anybody, that they can really move the ball consistently. Mm-hmm. So it's not. That's why I was there going, is Ole Miss defense that good? I don't know, because if you look at what we did to them, what Georgia did to them, it's kind of like Kentucky really doesn't move the ball very well. So it is what it is. We got to find a way to move it. But again, if our number one, hiccup right now is tackles for loss, is getting hit behind the line of scrimmage.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. It's really. Yes, we get a lot of negative plays, but we still get hit behind the line of scrimmage and get positive plays. So we got to figure out a way to get some push, get the running backs room, get Sellers room, Robbie room, whoever's in. If they're running play, that they're getting touched 2-3 yards past the line of scrimmage. That I said that every week, but that's the number one thing we have to get better at.
803-404-6100 to be part of the program. Ryan with us for the entire hour talking Carolina. We'll continue looking ahead at the Carolina Ole Miss game, get into a few other thoughts. And again, with me talking to 2 lifelong Cincinnati Red fans, we'll do a little remembering of the great Pete Rose. Again, a flawed life, amazing baseball player. And the second half of it all, it's a.
You say flawed life one more time, I'm going to clothesline you.
Why?
Because you know flawed life.
Yeah, he did.
No. It's Pete Rose, baby.
Clothesline him anyway.
I might.
Yeah, you can do it.
I may just go head first, slide right through.
But I'm just. I'll
pretend this is the All-Star game, and you're Pete Rose, and you're rounding third, heading for home.
So I'm Ray Fosse,
and you're Ray Fosse. Yeah, we can just reenact one of his most notorious plays.
The thing is, Ryan's like twice as big as Pete Rose, man. I ain't here for that.
We're not here to typecast, man. Yeah. This is not. We are limited.
If anything, Ryan needs to be Ray Fosse as a catcher type, and I can be Pete.
Well, then
I'll do that as well.
Then you're not running him over.
I will take that as well.
That's the whole point. We need somebody to get run over, and between the two of you,
I actually might think that would be more fun, just to see if he could dive into me and see what would happen.
He might take more of the brunt of it than you would.
We'll see.
But there's one way to find out.
Well, we'll see what we can do. See, that would be more like an hour 4 or after a few beers or some such.
We can make that happen. I know, folks.
Why aren't we live on a remote? And
I don't. Well, you come back. You know what?
Breweries.
Come back on Friday and hang out with. We'll be at a brewery on Friday.
Brewsday, and we're not live. What's going on here? Do I need to?
You should bring some beer. That's it. It is Brewsday on the postgame show.
Y'all, it is already October. The year is winding down. You blink and it goes from January to October, and the year is flying before our eyes. And no better way to go ahead and start now to achieve your weight loss journey and your weight loss goals and get that done by the holidays by starting now with my friends at Columbia Secret for Weight Loss. And look, if anybody can attest to how this program works in such a short time, it is me. I started in late February of this year to reach my goal of losing 20 pounds. And before April rolled around, I achieved that goal. And you can do the same thing. Look, my friends over at Columbia Secret for Weight Loss, Paul, Grant, and Shaylin, do a fantastic job of coaching you along, helping you get the habits you need to be able to lose weight and doing all this without any pills or shots. And if you start now, you can achieve your goal by the holiday season. If that sounds good to you, give them a call, 803-824-4210. Again, that's 803-824-4210 or ColumbiaSecretForWeightLoss.com. Results may vary.
Welcome back into the postgame show here on a Tuesday afternoon. Along with Elijah Campbell, I'm Jay Phillips. It's Brewsday. Ryan Brewer in the house talking Gamecock football and a whole lot more. I want to come back around to the second question I asked you, and that's about the intensity of what's coming up on Saturday. Elijah made a point yesterday about if South Carolina, I know you would agree with this, if South Carolina could bottle the first half against LSU, South Carolina might be a national title contender, and that's asking – it's not necessarily asking a lot, but I do think it's something that is doable here. But do you and you mentioned earlier already to me, look, effort is the one thing that you should always expect, maximum effort. If any fan, coach, whatever player expects of somebody else, it should be your effort. But am I looking at it, and I want you to delve back in from a player perspective, am I looking at it from the wrong point of view when I say, can Carolina match the level of intensity I believe Ole Miss comes out with? You see my point?
Yeah, I do. Yes, but they're all right. So we still have a chip on our shoulder. I mean, just because they lost Kentucky doesn't mean they're gonna. I mean, if I'm a player in this game, it's like I still got to prove myself. No matter what, Ole Miss is favored in this game. Ole Miss is supposed to beat us. They're coming to our house, and they're the ones talking junk all the time. Lane Kiffin's known for being a jerk to us all the time. You got Juice on the other sideline that you all should be pissed off at. I mean, you
need to bring Alshon home for the weekend?
Alshon should be doing, he 100%, if he can, he should, he should be the starter, and he should be, just with a pump in his hand, gas tank and a pump and spraying gas everywhere.
An Exxon hat?
Yeah, 100%. It'd be awesome. I mean, if he came out of there of the cockaboose or whatever they do now, and he had an Exxon hat on or had
with some gas cans in his hands.
Yeah. Gas cans.
That would be so amazing.
But they're gas cans, and they just are briefcase, and they open up, and they're full of money coming out.
Yeah. Charles Bloom, if you're listening, I need you to make that happen.
That would be. It needs to happen, and if everybody would get it in the stadium, it'd be great. But
you got about 72 hours. We can do this.
But the whole thing is about they're going to come out. Everyone's going to give your best effort right off the bat. It just depends on what happens once you get hit in the face.
Right.
And I think that was the first time Ole Miss got hit in the face, and they panicked. If you can hit them early, and like you said, the LSU, if we go on top of them like that, it'll still be a dogfight, but it's going to be a little different than. I don't think they're going to have the fight as much as LSU did. I don't think they've had the fight like what Georgia showed after getting really hit in the face by Alabama.
Well, and that comes back around, and I don't, look, not that they care what I think, but as I've said. And I told Elijah yesterday, what happened to Ole Miss Saturday night is what I was, not afraid of or concerned about, but what I could envision happening for them. And it does take me back, again, to the Thursday night game here in 2009 when they were at a very similar level nationally. Are they prepared for that? And I'm not saying they're not any good or anything. I know they're talented. And, again, I'm a massive Lane Kiffin fan. Lane has grown up. He's still what you say. He's still a jerk, but he's found a way to harness it as opposed to just popping off and not being able to back it up, right? But then they didn't back it up the other night. It's an interesting dynamic that comes in here on Saturday because I'm with you too, and that's why I ask about Carolina. Carolina's in a different place right now, but all of a sudden you come in here 3-1, and only you, and I mean you, the team, expected you to maybe be where you are. Nobody else did.
Yeah. You still have a lot to prove.
Yeah.
And Ole Miss has the don't let, one loss turn into two type, that's going to be the mentality going in there. But at the same time, that is a real thing, because there's you get a little doubt. You just lost Kentucky. That wasn't supposed to happen.
Right.
That's Kentucky team that lost to South Carolina by
and you
a
lost.
lot.
You lost in Oxford
by a lot. Yeah, and I was home. So now all of a sudden you got a crowd that's usually at the end of the season, starting to think what's going on with Ole Miss. Not this early.
Right.
So it's a tough one. So I said we come out there hot, and they get a little bit doubt in their head. I mean that's part of it.
Right.
But at the same time, they're going to bring everything they have, and we have to match it. We have to bring everything we have. It should be a heck of a football game. By what I saw, what they did in the Kentucky game, what they've done before, and it's going to be a heavyweight battle out there.
And when you think about it too, getting off to a really hot start is kind of almost more important now when you look at kind of the game flow of the last one, right? It wasn't like Kentucky just ran the opening kickoff back and forced a 3-and-out. Ole Miss got the ball first and went like 4 plays down the field and scored with ease. They kind of got that lemon butt factor later whenever Kentucky just kind of choked the game out for 25, 30 minutes, and it ended up being a dogfight in the fourth. That game was at home, a little different. You go into Williams-Brice, it's going to be absolutely rocking. 83,000 plus screaming fans, and I don't know exactly how many Ole Miss is going to be able to bring, but it's going to be a hostile environment really for the first time this year. I can't be convinced that Wake Forest, that the game they played on the road earlier this year, was a hostile environment.
They had to use silent count.
Like if you can convince me that was a hostile environment, then you could sell water to a fish. But at the same time, you get into this game right here, South Carolina scores first, and you're down early. It's a completely different environment. Whereas, say, Ole Miss scores in the first drive, quiets the crowd a little bit, they have an opportunity to learn from their mistake. You can still get them in a situation or an environment that they have yet to experience.
Oh, yeah. In my ideal situations, we're on defense first, and we just put pressure and sack the heck out of them, whatever, get our crowd going. Just that would be they're known for their offense. We could score, and again, their defense has played well this year. Don't let me, they're doing really well this year, their defense is. But what our defense versus their offense is supposed to be, the A's versus A's, the ones versus ones. And then if we could get some sacks early or turnover early or something, that crowd goes nuts, then that's when I think that offense is going to go, uh-oh, what's going on here? This happened. We got pressured last week and couldn't figure it out. And, you can say, except for the first series. But if that first series they have the ball and we just go at them, that would be ideal for me. I would love to score first. I'd love to do all that. But I think if we could be that other way and the crowd gets into it, knowing that that's our strength and they just came out and, just blew them up, that would be awesome.
It's like they're more ripe for shell shock,
I think
if that can happen early based off just what happened last game.
Well, I want to come back and maybe compare a little bit of what we saw Carolina do to Garrett Nussmeier and relate that to Jackson Dart, because I do think there are some similarities, but I don't know if there's as many as you might expect. But I want to touch on some of those things too. And again, we'll get these two Red fans' take on the life and times of the late Pete Rose, who passed away yesterday at the age of 83. So much more to do on Brewsday. You're listening to the Postgame Show. Let me tell you about our great friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union. They have been doing this since the 1930s. And when I say this, I mean helping local members with any and all of their banking needs. Just like the big banks, checking, savings, credit cards, car loans, student loans, mortgages, equity lines, all the things that a big bank does, helping you with investing, with CDs and other investment tools. But they do it without paying back profits to shareholders. They return all of their earnings to members in the forms of lower rates and fewer fees. They keep all of their money here in the Midlands. They loan it back to local businesses and to your friends and neighbors. And that's what they've always done and will continue to do. My wife and I love what they've done for us in the last couple of years. We really appreciate it. Great people to work with, too, quite literally. Up at the Millwood branch, we're up there every so often, and they're really good people. There's 14 locations all across town. Again, any and all of your banking needs, so much more. Check out palmettocitizens.org and achieve your potential. Talking some Carolina football with our good friend Ryan Brewer. It's Brewsday here. Jay and Elijah with you. Patrick Davis is going to join us a little bit later on. Got a lot to talk about, including later a potential first step towards something larger for college football. A potential first step. Don't want to say that it is.
I'm skeptical.
Yeah. And also congratulations to Gonzaga going to the Pacific 12 Conference.
Hey, I will say that is a really good basketball league right now. I think I saw a stat where I think 6 of the teams that are now in the new Pac-12 in men's basketball received at-large bids for the NCAA tournament.
I like San Diego State. They're good.
They kind of went to a national championship game. A good program.
Like Kawhi ain't walking through that door, but
he ain't walking through that door. But there's a lot of good programs
where's the
coming
next
in there.
Kawhi? You just go get the next Kawhi.
I mean, they do churn out some really good defensive players over at San Diego State. Coach Fisher can coach, not Coach Fisher, he was there. Yeah. But Coach Brian Dutcher can coach some defense now. That team's top 5 in defense every year. They lock up.
That's pretty good. We'll touch on those things for you, too. Did either of you see the Michigan-Minnesota onside kick play?
Yes.
I heard about it, but I
still don't have a clue why
they called
he wasn't
it
offside.
No, he wasn't offside.
Even,
so I've seen the Big Ten today. Well, I guess yesterday announced that they have
fired the ref.
No, they didn't fire him. Nor did they officially say they were wrong. Which really
goes back to my TV show. They need to have.
They're never going to do that. Yeah, I agree. But they're never going to do. I wish just every once in a while it would be so satisfying. I think if you would just go, "Hey, they blew it."
Yes, the head of officials has a TV show the next morning and said, "Hey, my guy messed up. Sorry." That would make everyone feel. They wouldn't be happy, but
no,
make you
but
feel like
you feel
the
same.
Push-ups. Make them do push-ups on TV or something.
We
get a pie to the face or something like that.
I'm dead serious about this. Humans want closure, and you're right, Ryan.
Yes.
Even if I mean, you're not going to go back and change the result of the game, but it'd be nice. Yeah, you know what? I mean, like Don Dinkinger, like in the World Series in '85. Like that's like I'm sure there are other refs or umps or so, like the guy with the perfect game for.
Jim Joyce.
Yeah,
who ruined Armando Galarraga's. Perfect game.
Yeah, and still I'm like, yeah, I don't know how I blew it, and because Dinkinger's call was kind of like the same. It was like, dude, he was like, you missed it by a foot. Like, it wasn't even like, were you just not watching?
A great SportsCenter feature on that.
But in the
timer.
In the Michigan-Minnesota game, Minnesota made a feverish comeback. They were down 3, about a minute and a half to go. They onside kick. Their guy got it. And one of the officials, who was really not in great position, said, oh, no, you were offside. And, like, they had the Big Ten officials TV guy, and Coach Chris Peterson was doing the game. They're like, I don't know what they're calling here. I see all I see is a beautifully executed onside kick that Minnesota recovered with a chance to go down and tie or win the game. And so the Big Ten yesterday said, we're now going to position, and I forget which officials, I didn't write it down, but like the side judge or somebody like right there so that they'll know. I'm like, well, and then I always, is offside not reviewable? Offside is not a subjective call. Offside is not holding.
I don't know.
I don't think I've ever seen an offside be reviewed. Yeah, offsides be reviewed.
I don't think so.
Well, then can I suggest that it should be, because again, that's not subjective.
Especially if it's a play like that. There's got to be something, or when it's a scoring play versus this is a turnover, because pretty much an onside kick's a turnover, right?
Well, in a sense, yeah.
So I mean, is a turnovers reviewable, right? You got to say. I mean, it's
well. Here's the weird thing too about reviewing that, like offside or the way, like, having a procedural penalty, is that you're basically reviewing an imaginary line, and I think that can be.
Where's the imaginary
difficult.
line? There's freaking lines on the field.
Well, that's why I don't.
Like,
I know what you're saying, but that's why
I review someone's head being over it or something like that.
It's like a race, but it's also. I mean, yeah, they can look straight down the line and see.
I just didn't realize. I suppose
you can.
It's just like looking on the line and see if his foot's out of bounds. You can look down
and that was my point. It's like if there's a line, that's why I ask if it's reviewable, and I just have never thought about it, I suppose. But to me, and I get your point, Elijah, but again, we talk about holding or whatever, PI, like those are subjective calls, right?
Yes.
But
Yes, but this
this
blatant.
should
You
not.
can look
Either
down-
you are offside or you are onside.
I have heard a discussion about this play too before where, like, didn't Minnesota also touch the ball before it went 10 yards too? Like, if you reviewed the play, they also touched it before it went 10 yards.
That I did not see.
That's not what they called.
That's not what they called.
Still not what they called, but
And
at
I
the same
didn't-
time,
I didn't in the-
if you review it, then can you change that as the rule? Like, can you?
Well,
go
there's the
back
thing. Like, if you're
that
looking for one thing, but then you see another.
But I feel like I've seen where they've touched the ball and they had to go back and review it to see if they touched it before it went 10 yards.
I would agree with that too.
So why can they review that?
I don't know. I think I don't know. Anyway, I feel. But now the Big Ten, while not
There's
admitting,
been some really bad calls
yeah.
this year.
But to me, that should be subject to review because again, either you are onside or you are offside, and there is a line. Again, like Ryan said, if I can see if a dude has his foot out of bounds or if a ball crosses the goal line, why can't I look and see if someone did indeed? I mean, look. I'll blend in. We're all soccer fans here. Offside in soccer is absolutely reviewable. Yeah. And sometimes
Again,
it's
that
like,
imaginary line is not imaginary anymore. There's a
there's a
well,
line.
in soccer, yeah, it technically is an imaginary line.
It's
you apply.
Yeah, and then they apply. But I
tell me
mean,
you
but
can't
it's
apply a line on a football field
so
that
they
has
can.
lines.
Yeah,
already
that's
on
what
it.
they should.
But
do.
also, that's why the offside review in VAR has been so stupid.
Well, it's not. Yeah. Now I'll say it's flawed, but
I
nevertheless,
would love for the official to start doing
that
the
would be,
box
yes,
every
that's
time.
what either do. Yeah.
But they have to come up with your own different because they're so they're so against copying verbiage from like the NFL. They'll have to do their own sign. I don't know what it would be.
I like that sign. I do that sign every time they go to the camera or they go to the review booth. I do it in the stands. I keep doing the box. They go and look at the camera.
Let's come back around to Carolina's defense this weekend against Jackson Dart. This is an offense, as I mentioned, there aren't really a lot of similarities other than there's a lot of talent. LSU, I think, is a much more traditional kind of pro-style offense. Nussmeier is being groomed to head to the next level, and I think he's shown his worth. He's going to get a heavy opportunity. Of course, his dad has a lot to do with that, too, at the next level, but that's a whole other story. The point I'm making is Carolina was able to get to them in a way that no one else had already this season. Ole Miss likes to go quick. It's a little bit different. So you mentioned get some sacks, maybe some turnovers. I'm here with you, or here for you with that too. But how do you look at this, Ryan, as a way for Carolina to just be disruptive when things are already so quick? What does that do, especially if you can't make a lot of the changes you might like personnel-wise?
That is why they go quick, is because you're trying to get the D-line gassed, and those guys, DBs as well, get gassed. But that's why I love the fact that we had an off week coming in too. We're coming in healthy, fresh, whatever. But we have some D linemen that can play multiple snaps in a row and still put pressure on you. Our DNs are just absolute studs. But yeah, they do. That's the thing. You start getting pressure, you start getting them out of rhythm. That's the biggest thing. You get them out of rhythm where they got to change their personnel, so we get to change ours. And that's why I think our D line is going to be crucial. Getting the push they can and make sure that Kennard is. I mean, I think Kennard's just putting on a show right now.
Right.
I mean, he is. He's putting on a show. So it's those guys are going to come at him hot every time. And I know that they're going to have answers for him with a screen game, quick game. Ole Miss is real. They get rid of the ball as fast as they can, but at the same time, the blueprint, like we talked about earlier, was applied with what Kentucky did, getting pressure there up the middle, and throwing some blitzes at them. So I really am going to enjoy that aspect to see the chess match going between that our defense and their offense, and that's going to be the crucial part of this game.
Yeah, certainly, and then I think when they do it as well, or when you're able to take advantage of that, because that's something that Ole Miss's offensive line too. I think they showed a lot of vulnerability, and like when you look at Ole Miss's offensive line on paper, there are a lot of good individual pieces. I mean, shoot, they got 2 of the 5 starters there were 2 starters on a Joe Moore Award-winning offensive line at Washington last year. But I think they're still kind of going through something right now where there's a gelling process, and it really kind of tests the theory of can you build an offensive line through the portal and it be automatic. I think there might be some offensive line chemistry.
100%. I want to talk about that, the whole portal, bringing how many guys they have in there, different guys, and that's where I think the team chemistry is a big deal. You talk about culture, you talk about that. We have a lot of portal guys as well, but I think they buy in quick with the coaches staff and stuff.
It's not all on like the line.
Yeah, and it's not. Yeah, you have key components that are from different schools, and they come in there. It takes a little while to gel. It takes a while to learn the playbook. It takes a while, to see exactly what other coaches like, to see. I mean, you see with our players saying, "Man, I've never been coached like that before. You know, I never know this, didn't know that," and which is a positive. But if you're in a position that's like you're kind of stuck in your way as an lineman, your steps and doing like that, and all of a sudden you're trying to change them up, it does mess with you a little bit. So hopefully they're still gelling. They haven't figured it out yet, type deal. But it also, when you have a loss like that, what is the locker room dynamic? What's going on there? And that's where the whole, the best sport in the world has changed, because now with NIL and transfer portal and all that stuff, I don't know how tight locker rooms are anymore. Because if we lost a ball game, it was, we had player meetings and we talked through it. This crap will never happen again, type deal. We stood up to and owned our own mistakes, unlike referees, and we did that. So I don't know if that's if they have that type of group chemistry anymore. And I believe that's one of the biggest things that Coach Beamer brings to the table is these guys, no matter where they came from, transfer portal, freshman to senior, I feel like they still have the love for each other. They love for the Gamecocks and the name on the front, not so much the name on the back. Yes, they all want to get paid, but at the same time, bringing that culture and playing together is a big deal, especially after a big loss, and then trying to get your heads up and prepare for the next week.
Before we hit the break, I want to remind you, as we do every single week, that Ryan Brewer's visits are brought to you by the great people at Ryan Brewer Fence, who he knows. Yeah,
I'm out there trying to get some stuff done, man. And I'm not a huge fan of repairs, but with all the things going on, we're here to help. So if you do have a tree or anything fell on your fence or something happened, just go to ryanbrewer.net, send us an email or call us, and we'll get you on the list as soon as possible. And like I said, we know it's tough, and we're trying to knock them all out as quick as we can and help everybody out. I'm not trying to go out there and try to kill everybody price-wise. I just want to help people out, that type deal. So, but yeah, if any type of fence deal y'all need, from pool fence, privacy fence, anything like that, we can take care of you. Custom work, we can take care of you. Mailboxes and artwork as well. But, our biggest thing right now is to get out there and help everybody out.
Yeah, get it back to normal. Might need a lot of temporary fence these days too, huh?
Yeah, temporary. That's tough, man, because they're blowing over in construction sites, or, people have dogs and stuff. They're trying, there's some things we just can't get to right away, but we got some crews that can throw up some temporary stuff to make sure dogs are safe or whatever in the meantime.
Yeah. RyanBrewer.net. More of the postgame show and Brewsday coming up. 12 minutes in front of 4 o'clock on this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back in. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell, Ryan Brewer, Brewsday, talking a lot of Carolina football. Before we get Ryan's final thoughts on what he's expecting Saturday afternoon at Williams-Brice, again, the two guys that are here with me right now are lifelong Cincinnati Red fans. And whether you're a Red fan or not, and really even how old you might be, Elijah never, I mean, I don't mean this in a bad way, but Elijah didn't see Pete Rose, play baseball, but you certainly know the legend, the living legend that was Pete Rose, and now he's passed on as of yesterday. And I guess you even only saw him as a little kid.
I was, 5, 6 years old, something like that, when he was playing. So, I mean, I had it, but I still had the plenty of slip and slide days when we were trying to beat Pete Rose diving down
head first.
And that was probably the only reason, even baseball, you weren't supposed to slide head first when you were that little.
No, it's not good for well.
You better believe what I was doing out there.
Sure.
I was Pete Rose, baby.
I remember Pete. Really, my first memories of Pete Rose are as a Philadelphia Philly. I remember him as a Red a little bit. I remember those big Red Machine teams, but I was like first grade when they won that second World Series. Maybe not even maybe starting first grade that year, I guess. Yeah. But I remember him as a Philly. I remember it was weird when he went to the Expos for a little bit.
Yeah.
But he got offers from the American League, but he said, "Nah, all my records are in the National League, and I want to stay in the National League." And then, of course, he went back and was player manager for the Reds for just a little bit. And I mentioned earlier, and Ryan didn't want to hear it, but I hate to tell you that it is true, but he did have a flawed.
He gambled a little bit.
Dude,
just a little bit.
He gambled a little bit.
Who amongst us does not gamble?
He never bet against his own team.
Yeah. Well, he didn't know. He never bet against.
And it's all, they never really found out what he did. It's all, he allegedly gambled on that stuff. We know he gambled in other stuff, but it was alleged that he gambled in baseball.
Well, he admitted it finally.
Kind of.
Well,
he just took it. Here's my deal. If the writers, which they can, whatever, decide that, hey, he's all of a sudden reinstated and they gets inducted to the Hall of Fame, I hope that he already made a video and tells them to go do something to themselves.
Knowing Pete, he probably did. Like if
that would be awesome.
Hey, it's Pete Rose. If you're watching this, it's because you screwed me over. You bleed, and then it's just nothing but that.
It's
for the
just
rest of the time.
like a VHS tape that says "Play this upon death."
Yeah, whoever his Playboy wife that goes up there and does the speech goes, "I have a message from Pete."
Right,
and it's just he's just flipping him the bird all the time.
I have felt for many years that Pete Rose absolutely deserved to be in the Hall of Fame. Why he is not is still very problematic for me. I understand why he was given the suspension he was given, or the ban, or whatever application there is. But as I said, you look at the complications that were Pete Rose, including like the Ray Fosse thing.
Yeah.
Listen, that was very problematic for people. That was an all-star game, and he basically ruined Ray Fosse's career. Ray never recovered from that injury to become an all-star level baseball player anymore. And Pete never apologized. He said, "I understand people are upset, but that's how I play, and this is a game." And they're like, "Dude, don't take it so seriously." Pete didn't have another.
He didn't have an off switch.
He didn't.
Nope. And that's the thing. He was always going. That's part of the gambling problem too. But he didn't have an off switch.
Right.
But that's
what made him great.
Yeah, because he wasn't big enough to play football. So that's what he played. He went on that base path. You better watch out.
Well, I saw a quote, and I guess I remember seeing this years ago, but I saw it this morning. But Pete Rose said, "I would walk through hell in a gasoline suit to play baseball."
That's who I want on my team.
Yeah.
Pete Rose is who I want on any team. I don't care what it is. My foxhole guy.
Yeah.
And he may gamble when we die in that foxhole,
right?
But he's still
Which
my foxhole guy.
He's got to die first.
He's got the over on how long you're in the foxhole.
But Pete should have been in the Hall, and I know a lot of people nationally have felt this way. I know Dan Patrick, grew up in the greater Cincinnati area and has talked about his reverence for those Reds teams from back in the day. Johnny Bench was on Dan's show this morning. Johnny and Mike Schmidt.
Johnny's probably the best Red ever.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he's won. Pete's 2-3.
Yeah. Well, Joe Morgan is underappreciated. He's so bleeping good, man. But yeah, Johnny Bench, because Johnny Bench is the best catcher to ever play the game.
Yes.
With all due respect, Yogi Berra, I think Johnny Bench, and I think a lot of people do, I think Johnny Bench is just the best catcher to ever play the game. But regardless, they went to the commissioners and tried Johnny and Joe and Mike Schmidt to petition for Pete to get in, and it was just never going to happen. Johnny told the story this morning, that Bud Selig told him on a third trip, like, hey, you've been twice, and like, I'm not being mean to you, Johnny. It's not.
That's where Johnny said, I'm going to be here every day until you do it.
It's not. It's just
I'm
not.
Johnny Bench.
But in a museum, and that's look.
See, that's the problem. He wasn't like Baker Mayfield and take away and say, I don't want a Heisman.
Right.
Or was it Baker or was it?
No, Baker.
Or was it Manziel? Who did that?
No, Johnny Manziel said, that was about Reggie Bush.
So
right?
Reggie Bush gets out. Yeah, gets his.
Something like that.
That's what everyone in the hall should have been like. I'm giving like the whole Notre Dame Rudies. Everyone's giving their jersey back. Everyone give their Hall of Fame back.
That'd be great. I mean, because Pete Rose is quite literally the all-time hit king. No one that has ever played the game has more hits than Pete Rose. Again, unlike Lance Armstrong, who I mentioned earlier, Lance cheated. With drugs. Pete never cheated, to your point earlier, Ryan.
No, because he gambled on himself.
Right.
He had that gasoline suit on.
Yeah.
Whatever, and he gambled on himself and said, hey, take it. He actually probably went up to, when he was playing, probably said, hey, I gambled that I'm going to hit the ball off you on this pitch right here. Throw it.
Well, he definitely would.
Kind of like Larry Bird. I'm going to come around the corner. DJ's going to pass me the ball. I'm going to hit a three. We're going to win.
He actually might take Larry Bird.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. Pete, man. Yeah. And we'll talk more about him later. I know, but for you in Ohio,
it's a tough one. It was.
He's more than a hero. Yep. There's no question.
He rises of the big red machine, man.
He rises above. I agree. And again, it's a tough. Like I say, it's tough to put it all together. But he should be in the Hall, and then you should say, and here's what happened to Pete after he was one of the great players to ever do it. Thanks as always. That's Ryan. Hour 2 coming up. Real quick, let me tell you about our good friends at Palmetto Propane, family-owned since 1959, South Carolina's leading full-service propane company. They provide exceptional propane service, delivery, installation of a full range of products, things like brand-new gas logs. Listen, everybody loves a nice fire, around the holidays, indoors or out. But maybe you're tired of the wood pile. Well, it's time to get into a Palmetto Propane Hearth and Patio Home Store showroom and see what a lot of these gas logs look like. Or you say, no, I'm good on the inside. But how about fire features outside? Yes, they can do that for you too. Fire pits and lanterns, things to keep you really nice and warm outside all the time. And, of course, the Renai tankless water heater. I'm telling you, get one and thank me later. Plus grills and accessories. They've got 5 Hearth and Patio Home Store showrooms across the Midlands, Aiken, West Columbia, Batesburg, Lexington, and across the river in Augusta. And you can learn a whole lot more, including where the nearest one is to you when you go to palmettopropane.com. Delivering propane to homes and businesses since 1959. Palmetto Propane. 4 o'clock on this Tuesday afternoon, the first day of October, which means yesterday was the last day of September.
That's how time works.
Man. Well, that's how calendars work. It's not really time. Well,
It is, because what makes the calendar go by?
I don't know.
Time, baby.
Yeah. Somebody should sing a song about that.
Somebody should. And a whole hour about things that, not a whole hour, a whole album of similar themes like time and money.
Hanging on in quiet desperation is the English way. It's a good line.
It's a great one.
It's a good
All
line.
time. That's maybe a top 5 favorite album for me ever. It's a really popular one. So
It is. And, well, it's crazy, man.
I could listen to that one all the way
Dark
through.
Side of the Moon didn't leave like the Rolling Stone Hot 100 albums for like 15 years or something. It's not my favorite Floyd album. It's probably like actually my 3rd or 4th favorite Floyd album. But, and if you're wondering, Animals is my favorite.
I was wondering.
Without question.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yep. Probably then followed by Wish You Were Here. Then probably Dark Side.
Okay.
Yeah. Regardless.
So good.
Yeah. No, that's a good one. All right.
Time's the best song from that one, for being honest with ourselves.
I don't know. Great Gig in the Sky.
The guitar solo kills me every time.
David Gilmour's solo work too. We could go. I don't want to.
Could go all day.
If we talk about Pink Floyd, man, it'll keep going.
Damn day.
I will say one more thing, because people that love the Who, I've always said, like bless their hearts, because the Who are great. They are. The only crime the Who committed is that they came up at the exact same time as Led Zeppelin, the Rolling Stones, and Pink Floyd.
Yeah, that's true. But they still, even despite all that, still incredibly commercially successful.
They are, but it's like
still one of the greatest rock groups.
Yeah, and I looked it up one day. I was like, how many albums did they sell relative to those 3? And I was like, oh, like not. Is
it really that big of a gap? I've never
really
looked at those numbers, but I would not hypothesize that the gap is that large.
I was surprised at how big the gap was. Yeah. Stones and Zeppelin, you kind of get. Floyd too. But like the Who sold a lot of records. Just when you compare them to those 3, didn't really. Because again, they were just kind of like, am I going to listen to the Floyd or the Who, Stones or the Who, Zeppelin or the Who?
The answer is yes.
Well, sure.
The answer is yes to all of it.
Thanks as always to Ryan. We ended the hour talking about Pete Rose passing away last night at the age of 83. Dikembe Mutombo passing away yesterday too. And while they were very different in terms of their their place in their respective sports, they were certainly figures that were larger than life and did so much away from their sport too, and remembered for very different things. But a lot of you have been on hold. Thank you. Again, we were talking a lot of football that hour, and we started off with a little bit, but I want to get to some of these calls because, again, I appreciate your patience as we talk about Pete and the other things around his life. Wooly will get us going. Hey, Wooly, how you doing, bud? Thanks for holding on.
Hey, love the show, fellas. It was a pleasure listening to, I do believe, a former Mr. Football Ohio, Ryan Brewer.
Yep.
I'm so glad he came here and created so many memories.
Yeah, he's a good one.
Growing up, I was given a book, I believe it was titled Charlie Hustle, Pete Rose on Baseball. And this was 45 years ago, probably. And I was a Ute, and it really, really taught me to be a good teammate and how to play, and it gave me a lot of advice on how to be an adult, even though I was only 12 at the time. And I have much respect for Pete Rose, and I think he deserves to be in the Hall.
Yeah, I do too. Thanks, Wooly. I appreciate you.
Good call.
That is, like I say, I understand the whole thing. Going from A to Z in the at least from the time that Pete joined the Cincinnati Reds. And remember too, what's cool about Pete grew up in Cincinnati. I mean, he was as hometown a kid as you could possibly be. But you do have to factor all of it in reflecting upon the life of a person. But the baseball fan in me, and I remember Tommy and I having these conversations, and Tommy felt the same way. Pete Rose it's not even like, oh, we talk about it in the sense of like, he deserves to be, like almost like the way I talk about my hero, Dale Murphy, I think deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I understand why Murph's not in and probably isn't going to get in from a baseball perspective. But from that same baseball perspective, I mean, Pete Rose should be a unanimous Hall of Famer. There is no debate.
Yes.
And Johnny made a point this morning, Johnny Bench on Dan Patrick's show. It's 4,256 hits, right?
Yeah, I got it pulled up. 4,256. Yes.
But Johnny said, remember this: Pete reached base more than 6,000 times.
That's insane.
I mean, with the walks and everything else, or HBPs, reaching by, just the OBP. I mean, Pete just had a knack. Remember, he was a switch hitter, and he worked hard at that. He played almost, I think the only two places he didn't play were like pitcher and catcher. Maybe he never played center.
Yeah, I mean,
or
Baseball
short.
Reference
I don't
has
know.
him as outfielder, first baseman, and third baseman.
He played a little second. I know he played a little second, but Joe Morgan was obviously better. He probably didn't play shortstop ever.
Okay, appearances. He made 939 appearances at first, 628 at second, 634 at third. Never played shortstop. 673 in left, 73 in center, 590 in right, and pinch hit 97 times. Yeah. So catcher, pitcher, shortstop.
And shortstop. So he did play center field. How many times did he play center field?
He played center field, let's see, 73.
Okay.
73 of his 1,328.
Yeah. So, I mean, think about that, too. I mean, he could play basically anywhere. Again, the baseball player that was Pete Rose should have been in the Hall of Fame for the last 30 whatever years, because I guess Pete officially retired in like 86, 87.
Yep.
So 5 years out, 32, let's just say 30 years. Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame.
Certainly.
Now, I understand why he's not. I've always believed, and listen, Bart Giamatti was an amazing but very short-lived commissioner because he died. But I thought it was a wonderful hire when they made it. And I understand where he's coming from. But I still believe you can incorporate all of this in. This was the point I was making at the end of the last hour. Put Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame. And on the plaque or at the display, you include, because it's part of the story. It's part of the narrative.
Yeah.
You can't hide from that.
Nor should you.
While Pete, was one of the most fantastic baseball players, hardworking baseball players in the history of the game, he also received a ban for gambling on the game, which is completely forbidden. And have that be part of the story. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But they didn't. They sent such a strong message to discourage anyone from doing this ever again. I don't want to liken it to the SMU football death penalty of the 80s. I don't think, but that's what they hoped to do. Did that work, by the way, Elijah?
Not at all, actually. No, quite the opposite.
I mean, tons of schools were still getting popped for whatever. And look, there is the occasional baseball player that probably still gambles on the game.
Yeah, there's Shohei Ohtani, maybe.
No, he did.
Or their
But his guy did. Yeah, his guy.
His guy.
His guy was siphoning money off and doing it too. So.
Wild story. But yeah, I mean, the Hall of Fame, it's, if you can't tell the story of your sport without this person, which clearly you cannot tell the story of baseball without the guy who's had the most
hits.
Who was a key cog on 3 World Series championship teams, arguably the team, like the franchise of the 70s. Yeah. Then
went to another place and helped them finally do it.
But no sport, no professional sport in American history is more ashamed of its own past than baseball,
right? Or
at least selective on the past, right? I mean, like there are other people.
There's 1919 and there's Pete Rose.
Yeah. In the steroid era. I mean,
Well, yeah, but in terms of gambling,
yeah,
there's 1919 and there's Pete Rose.
Yeah, and like this is a sport
And
that
we can't have that.
sport that has a history of like cheating at every era and every time, different like forms of cheating, and then some gambling scandals and some maybe like some not great heroes, right? Like in terms of being like role models, like Ty Cobb, historically one of those players. But you cannot tell the story of baseball without like the careers.
What's crazy is that a lot of people say that there is so many similarities between Ty Cobb and Pete Rose, because Pete Rose, while a fantastic baseball player, a lot of people say he's kind of a tool.
Yeah. Oh, that was his reputation. Was that he absolutely was. And there's a lot of stuff in his personal life that if you took a good scroll, a good deep dive, you won't like what you find.
Right.
But in the game of baseball, these guys, while they're flawed human beings, the human beings are flawed by nature. You can't tell those stories without mentioning some of the scandals and some of the things that made them such polarizing figures. Whether, like the good, bad, whatever, you can't be ashamed to include that in the story. And Major League Baseball is just the one sport that is so terrified of having any of that linger in its Hall of Fame, when really you have to tell the whole picture, because it encapsulates the human element of the sport. And what makes sports great is that we do have such a human element to it. It's more than just numbers on a spreadsheet. It's more than just the results of wins and losses. These are humans with human lives, with human stories that make them complex and fascinating all at the same time. And it's just, baseball's the one that always makes me really mad, that they just get really picky and choosy about the sins that they can forgive.
I agree. Let's get to Ray up next. Hey, Ray, how you doing, bud?
Hey, Jay. Well, I tell you, I was going to call and talk about our Braves, but I tell you, this kind of got, a bigger topic, kind of developed with the Pete Rose thing and everything. And I got to thinking about it, and at the time, that was, oh, man, that was, oh, God, that was the worst taboo you could ever do. I mean, you were, oh, my God, they'd almost put you in prison if you went against the baseball rules, especially about gambling on, baseball, because it says, I will not gamble on baseball. Okay. So I was thinking, you brought up the SMU thing and how outrageous that was at the time. Unbelievable, But, heck, it was only 10 or 12 years ago. Remember A.J. Green with UGA there?
Yeah.
I believe it's from Somerville. What did he do? He signed a jersey, gave it away.
He had a game-worn jersey that he signed and sold for like $1,000, man. $1,000.
Man, they were going to suspend him. And
they did suspend him for 4 games. It happened while we were at media days.
They were going to take away wins and all that. Now, think about fast forward 10, 12 years later now with NIL. That's almost like he got gypped. He got robbed. It's unbelievable how things have changed in just 10 to 12 years. And in baseball, we're talking a rule that was put in over 100 years ago. I know they've always adhered to it and all that. So I'm kind of like you. I can understand why Pete Rose got fined or got suspended for a while, but he belongs in that hall. And just to give you an example, Jay. So I can, I remember I was too young at the time when Joe Namath got in all kinds of trouble because he had a swanky club in New York City.
Right.
Oh, you can't do that and be quarterback of the New York Jets. No, you can't do that. So I got to thinking.
Which, by the way, is like the stupidest thing I've ever heard. It's like, wait, he can't have a side business? What's he?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So then.
He's not like drugging giant players when they come in.
So then, I watch all these NFL football games now. And who's one of the biggest sponsors of the NFL now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, and the gambling part of it, too.
And I don't want to give them, free advertising. So I'm thinking, and baseball is doing everything they can to hold off of not doing that. But they're eventually going to do it. And I think now that Rose is dead, they may do that. And if they do that, Jay, I think Rose needs to be, what's the word they use? Posthumously, yeah.
I don't know how that's going to go down, and I'm up against it. We're a good phone call, Ray. Yeah. I think, look, they've embraced the gambling part of it because you're going to make a lot of money off of it. And like I say, Pete can be in the hall and still have the story told. Because listen, I will say this. If you are involved directly in the games as a player, coach, manager, whatever, you can't bet. You just cannot bet. Even if you're betting for your team, you cannot do it. Got a bunch of phone calls lined up. Sit tight. Coming right back. 20 minutes after 4 o'clock on this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back into the postgame show. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell with you. I want to remind you, just a few craft beer cards left. It's $79 for $360 worth of beer. Now, I can do that math, and that means you pay a lot less for these beers than the retail. $79. You get $30 per brewery at 12 different craft beer locations. Head over to 1075thegame.com. Click on Sweet Deals. Grab yourself a craft beer card, which, by the way, will still be one of the prizes for this week's Wild Card Showdown, unless Elijah Campbell goes 5-0 again.
Then ain't no one winning anything.
That's right. Elijah just doesn't want you to. Elijah doesn't like you.
That's right. I want all these for myself. Nothing gets me to turn on the competitive juices.
No, Elijah's very kind, actually, and likes a lot of people. He's a very nice person.
I do. I'm a lover, not a fighter.
There you go.
But I do like winning those.
Well, I like winning.
I like winning.
Let's get back talking Pete Rose, and after he passed away yesterday, again, a complicated legacy. There's no question, and that's part of the fascination. I think that's the right word to apply here. Troy is up next. Hey, Troy, how you doing, bud?
Hey, I'm doing good, Jay. How you doing?
I'm well, sir. Thank you.
Pete Rose and Johnny Bench were my two heroes growing up. They are why I am a Cincinnati Reds fan to this day. And it's really hard being a Reds fan right now, but future does look bright.
Yeah, Elijah's with you. He's a fan too.
Oh, cool. Pete should be in the Hall of Fame, but I could go all day long about that. And it's a shame he did not get in while he was alive, because he really wanted to get in. And all that's a shame. But what I really want to talk about most today is the 1970 All-Star Game. The All-Star Game back then mattered. I mean, it mattered a lot. It wasn't an exhibition game like it is today. National League wanted to beat the American League, and the American League wanted to beat the National League. And actually, players got paid a little more for winning. And back then, of course, nobody was making great money. But it's just an example of how important the All-Star Game was, at least to me and my dad. In 1972-ish, we were at Disney World. And Tuesday night, you want to guess where we were? We were in the motel watching the All-Star Game that Tuesday night. And that's how important it was back then. And all I got to say about Ray Fosse getting run over, Pete played to win. The one record he is most proud of is that he's played in more winning games than any other player in any professional sport.
Yeah.
And Pete Rose played to win, and all I can say to Ray Fosse, if you didn't want to get run over, you shouldn't have been blocking the plate.
And that's fair. And great phone call as always, Troy. I appreciate you. Again, the Ray Fosse incident is one of those. It's probably like on the top 10 list of Pete Rose incidents because of what it was. But what Troy said isn't wrong in the sense of that was Pete the competitor. And yeah, back then, Troy's right. And look, I was born a few months after that happened. I was born in late 1970, so I don't remember that. I just know the stories. But Troy's right in the sense that back then, league versus league still meant much more than it does. Today, it means almost nothing. Today, it's really nothing. It's kind of like the NFL or the NBA. All of them are that way. Hockey, it's just a way to separate teams so that you can seed the playoffs. That's really all it is. You got to remember, and back then, yes, there was the umbrella that was called Major League Baseball, but the American League was run by the American League, and the National League was run by the National League. And
independent entities.
Yeah, and when they needed to get together under the auspices of Major League Baseball, they did. But, and I went back, I mentioned earlier, I remember when I was in like middle school and Pete went from Philly to Montreal. And it's because really at that point, Pete was well past his prime, but he could offer up a little something. And he wanted to keep playing, and he was still a draw. And let's face it, that is absolutely part of the business of sports. I want to go see him play. I want to go see her play. And so Pete had chances to go, to some cities in the American League that would have probably been better for him than going to play in that crappy old dome in Montreal. But he was very emphatic. I'm a National League guy, and basically that was the best offer he had to remain in the National League. The Reds were not yet at a place where they wanted to bring him in as their player manager, which Marge Schott ultimately did a couple seasons later. So that was always in his head. I'm a National Leaguer. That's what I do. I play baseball in the National League. And look, it's unfortunate that Ray Fosse, again, basically was never the same player. Pete busted him up pretty good, like hurt his shoulder real bad. He just couldn't never do anything again the same way. But Troy's not wrong. That Pete didn't. We talked about it with Ryan earlier. Mm-hmm. Pete had one way to play, Pete's way.
And that was 100%.
Yeah,
at all times.
Yeah, at all times. I mean, if Pete had a broken leg, well, then he's just going to be doing it slower. But he's going to play.
But the effort's still there.
Yeah. And so I get that part. I don't know how you feel about this, Elijah, as a fan, or those of you who grew up idolizing Pete, which tons of kids did. I think a lot of American kids saw themselves in Pete Rose because, again, Pete, look, when you look at a guy like Chipper Jones or Barry Bonds or, Peyton Manning or something, like, you're probably better than me. you're big and strong, right? Pete, just regular looking dude, man, who just worked his tail off. But Dan Patrick this morning, and again, to be clear for those of you, Dan's been popular for a long time, but Dan grew up in the Cincinnati area and idolized the Reds, and especially Johnny Bench and Pete Rose, and he's made that abundantly clear for years and years, decades even. But he said today, and I hadn't really thought about it, and he meant it in a good way, so hear me out. He said, I hope now that Pete doesn't go in the Hall. Now, Dan 1,000% believes he should be there and should have been there, again, for 30 whatever years. But he said now it would be disingenuous. Because it's almost like, well, we'll put him on the ballot and he'll get in because he's dead.
Mm-hmm. Should not do.
And the way Dan was saying that, it really kind of sunk into me like, I get you.
Well, I think that's a microcosm of an issue I think that we have in society as a whole. Yes, some people can be very complicated figures, but when celebrating somebody's life or their career or, even if they're not baseball superstars, sometimes we don't appreciate the people that are in our lives until they are gone. And that is tragic. There are so many people, I guess, that may be listening to this right now that maybe didn't appreciate somebody close to them, or they didn't maybe do a lot of things they wish they did until they were gone. You don't realize that until they are gone, which is why celebrating anybody for anything, I'm always 100% in support of, especially when it comes to achievements of any kind. I mean, when you celebrate somebody, you do it when they're alive. Yeah. When you do things like getting somebody into a Hall of Fame, things that are celebratory in nature, you do it while they're alive because the sentiment is lost if they are no longer here to celebrate that sentiment. So doing so, Major League Baseball would really be telling on itself if they decided to put him in the Hall of Fame after he passed,
that was Dan's point.
Put him on the ballot. You'd be telling on yourself about really how fake the sentiment is. Right. And that's what it would be. It would be, I think Dan Patrick said it perfectly. It would be disingenuous. It would be phony. And it would be an insult to, I guess, maybe the family of Pete Rose.
803-404-6100. More phone calls coming up as you listen to the postgame show.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to, they're causing some issues on the roadways here in the Midlands, and we're going to start in Richland County. Got some accidents on Clemson Road at I-20, one on Fernandina Road at St. Andrews Road, one on Highway 1 at Augusta Road near O'Neill Court, one on I-26 westbound that's got the left lane block, and that's going to be over near Broad River Road and exit 97. Also have one on 77 southbound at Forest Drive near exit 12. In Lexington County, there are only 2 so far. One's on Highway 1 at Augusta Road southbound. That's at I-26, and the other one on Highway 6 at Irmo Drive.
Been talking some Carolina football earlier with Ryan Brewer, and then we've gotten into a pretty heavy discussion on the life of Pete Rose, who passed away yesterday at the age of 83, baseball's all-time hits leader. And Troy just mentioned, too, something I did not know about Pete Rose until this morning, for as big a baseball fan as I am. Pete Rose was involved in more wins than any player in sports. At least in North American sports. Now, again, baseball plays a lot of games. But Pete was part of, certainly in the late 60s and into the 70s with the Reds. And then, with the Phillies, they were very good. They won a lot. And, he won 2 world titles with the Reds. But I know they played in at least one more against Oakland. Was that just the 3 World Series with Cincinnati?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. He's got 3 as a player.
3 championships.
3 championships.
Yeah, because he played, again, 1 with Philadelphia, but he played in 4 total.
I believe so.
Because, again, I know that Reds team was getting really good, but lost during that three-peat that Oakland had. And I couldn't remember if maybe they played back-to-back. I think Oakland beat New York. They beat the Mets one time. They beat the Reds one time. I can't remember who they beat the third time. But anyway, Pete, man, but again, flawed because he was not just – listen, you can forgive like 1 or 2 times or whatever, but the records show, Pete Rose was routinely gambling on baseball for years.
Lost 2 World Series with the Reds. He was 2-2.
Okay, so did they lose 2 times to Oakland?
One was in 1970, and that was to Baltimore.
Oh, okay. All right. Man, Baltimore, Boog Powell and those guys back then.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, so 4 world. Anyway, they won a lot. They won a lot, and
did a whole lot of winning.
Yeah,
made the playoffs a couple times too.
That's
championship series, which back then meaning that making the playoffs means a whole lot more than it does now.
Yeah, that's when you won your division. Of course, that started in 1969.
Nice.
At least there's one thing I have for the Braves is the Braves were the first ever National League West champion. By the way, quick aside, then I'm getting to you, Don. Always bothered me, Elijah, that until the early 90s, the Atlanta Braves and the Cincinnati Reds, 2 teams/cities in the Eastern time zone even, were in the National League West.
Dumb.
Whereas the St. Louis Cardinals and Chicago Cubs in the Central time zone and to the west geographically of Atlanta and Cincinnati were in the East.
Is that dumber or equivalent to the Memphis Grizzlies being in the Western Conference in the NBA?
Well, I'll say this, too. I believe the Atlanta Falcons for a time were in the NFC West.
Makes a ton of sense. The compass means nothing to anyone.
But, yeah, like Memphis, again, at least Memphis. Well, here's the thing. It would make sense if Memphis, the city, if the Grizzlies played in West Memphis and they were across the river, then it's a whole different thing. Because if you're west of the Mississippi, then it's just,
you can be considered.
Then that's just a whole different animal.
Like Oklahoma City, yeah. I mean, that makes total sense. West,
because basically, in the old American parlance, if you were west of the Mississippi, then you were out on the frontier. And so, while today West Memphis, Arkansas, is just a suburb across the river, if you really want to think about it, that's the frontier. So that would be perfectly fine.
The FedEx Forum is east of that.
Atlanta and Cincinnati, on the other hand,
Eastern time
in
zone.
the Eastern time zone. Doesn't make sense. I think I want to say
Quintessential pro sports.
somebody help me out. Wasn't it like Atlanta and the Bucks and the Niners and the Rams? Wasn't that the old NFC West?
You can look that up.
Like from back in the day? Just doesn't, anyway, whatever. Let's get to Don up next on the phone lines. Hey, Don, good afternoon.
Hey guys, how you doing?
All right, man.
Hey,
We're figuring out life's problems, Don. That's what we're doing here.
Slowly,
Yeah.
very
The guys-
slowly.
The guys who put together these divisions are geographically challenged.
Right. Yeah.
And
we
now
also have
conferences.
Stanford, who's in the Atlantic Coast Conference, right?
Right. Yes, Atlanta. Yeah. Stanford and Cal.
It's
Yes.
become a great tradition in
That's right.
sports.
Yeah.
But it's on the ocean. That's what they'll tell you. It's on the ocean.
There you go. Hey, I have to admit, I'm a Pittsburgh guy. All right. Grew up in Pittsburgh. 1961, my dad took me to a twilight doubleheader, Pirates versus New York Mets. We sat in the right field bleachers, right behind my hero, number 21, the great Roberto Clemente.
There you go.
And I mean, he's the only guy that I really admired. But I tell you what, I respected, some of the other players. Definitely, Hank Aaron and Willie Mays and Bob Gibson as a pitcher. I agree. Johnny Bench was probably the best catcher that there ever has been. But I also love Pete Rose. Just because what you were talking about. I mean, he was Charlie Hustle, and he was just like me. I'm a little guy, and I relied a lot more on, my guts. So I took that. And it was the same way I think Roberto Clemente had some of those same things. He was a little guy also, and to me, he was the best all-around player. But we can do that. And, I agree with Brian, and I love Brian because what was Ryan's number also, number 21?
Yeah.
And Ryan said that, Pete Rose is the kind of guy that he would like on his team. I agree with that, but I also would like Ryan Brewer on my team. I always did. I agree with the way – I just love his analysis after football games, man. He tells it just like it is, and he does a wonderful job for you all.
No, he's doing great things, and there are
Thank you.
There are thanks for that's kind of you and appreciate it. And Clemente, oh man, just taken. And again, I was just a little guy, but taken way too soon. And again on a humanitarian effort.
It's definitely an A+ humanitarian.
Yeah. And what's crazy about Clemente too is that his last hit was number 3,000. I mean, that's just, it always, I mean, I did it right here. It gives me that little chill of like, because it's such a magical number in the sport. And that was at the end of the season. And then he went home to help with earthquake relief and of course died in a plane crash. But Pete Rose, man, and you mentioned with Ryan, and I wasn't going to embarrass Ryan with something like that. But, before I knew Ryan, I mean, I met Ryan, a year after he finished playing. So I've known him now, over 20 years. But, he became an instant hero around here primarily because of his effort. I mean, he had results, and he had big wins. And, no one's ever going to forget the Ohio State game, but there was a lot more to Ryan than that game. That game just sort of encapsulated, so much of who he was and what he was. But, we talk a lot with Ryan about, being hurt and being injured. And you can see it in his face. I mean, the other day we were talking about it when he had to miss a game. It was 20-something years ago. And as he was talking about it, I can still, you can genuinely tell it bothers, not bothered, it bothers
Presidents.
him that he had to miss a game because he was injured. It does not sit well with him. Whereas a lot of people might go, dude, it was, whatever. He's like, don't tell me however long. And I can appreciate that. There are certain things in life where you might go that really bothers me. It's like, yeah, but it happened. It's like, what's your point? But Ryan just played with so much effort. And that's the number one thing that endeared him to this fan base. You know? And so, yes, there are some similarities in terms of what you see. Because, again, you know, Pete Rose just willed himself continually to be the best ball player he could be. And I did. I had never seen that quote before until this morning. I would walk through hell in a gasoline suit to play baseball.
The guy loved the game.
I love it, man. You know.
I do the same for a
But
cold
at the
beer,
same
buddy.
time, it's like Pete created so many of the problems that caused him to be banned, and he knew he was doing it, and he lied about it for many, many years.
Self-destructive.
You know,
there was some self-destructive.
and that's where I brought in the Lance Armstrong part. You know, like Lance just kept lying. You know, and I'm not trying to equate the two directly because, again, Pete achieved what he achieved as a ball player through nothing but hard work. Lance Armstrong had some hard work in there, but he was obviously a drug cheat.
Yeah.
So
Pete Rose
there's
tarnished his legacy in things that didn't involve enhancement of his career.
Right.
More like, I guess, selfish acts that were where he didn't think he would get caught or have the rules applied to him.
Right. So appreciate the call, Don. Have a great afternoon. 803-404-6100. So much more to do as the postgame show rolls on. Thirteen minutes in front of 5 o'clock on this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back in, Jay and Elijah. It's the post-game show. Patrick Davis is going to join us on tomorrow's program. He and I just talked during the break, and he's promoting something big that he's doing. He's also traveling, going to go be part of Jim Furyk's charity event. That's pretty cool.
Oh, very nice.
Yep. That's where they teach everybody to swing a golf club wrong and then still win the U.S. Open.
Or it's a contest, really, of what's the goofiest way you can swing a golf club.
And win the U.S. Open.
and win the U.S. Open or win anything.
Or I was going to say, yeah.
Have you ever tried replicating the Jim Furyk swing whilst on the course?
The only thing I've ever tried to replicate, and you'd realize how it's like stupid hard to do. I remember one time going with somebody at a driving range right after we saw Happy Gilmore.
I was going to say you
can't do it, man.
I'm telling you
can't do it.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
I could feel it.
Can't do it.
I've definitely tried, and I've definitely swung to the point where I was like, not out of my shoes, but on the ground.
You can't do it. It's just, it's a fine film. They're making the new ones in production.
I've seen. Yeah, I've seen that, and I'd be very eager to look to watch it, even if it is really dumb. It's a fantastic original movie, and you have my curiosity for any type of follow up.
I don't know where this is going to go, but I got some college football news for you, and I can't really put this in the headlines because it needs a little more time, even though I've only got about 5 or 6 minutes here before we hit the break. But an announcement made today. You heard that there's a lot of people out there. Why don't they just make college football like 60 or 70 schools and just have it be one league? And it's like, well, you can't really do that because conferences matter. Well, today, a group that wants to start a super league put out some details. They have been working on this for several months. They want to have 72 programs basically in the top. They would compete in what they call the Power 12 Conference, made up of a dozen 6-team geography-based divisions. This, according to Justin Williams of The Athletic. The remaining 64 programs would compete in a group of 8 conference. They'd be eligible for promotion, so this would be a lot like European football, European soccer, promotion and relegation, which, again, works quite well. But really, again, a lot of details to iron out here. Now, there's some pretty big names that are involved with this, including Grant Hill and Jimmy Haslam.
Thank God everything that guy touches goes to gold. That's great.
Yeah,
that's great news. Yeah,
he does.
Thanks for leading off of that one.
He does have a lot of money now. I'm trying to picture Truck Stop Jimmy going back home to Knoxville and explaining to the folks at the University of Tennessee why they need to forget all about what the Southeastern Conference has been for them for nearly 100 years.
That's going to go over really well. He does a lot of things that go over really well, like signing Deshaun Watson to the highest paid contract in the history of the NFL. That went over really well.
He said in a statement,
it's really good. Good job, Jimmy.
Quote, "We need to bring college football back to the broad national model of its golden years in a system which fosters more competitive balance." Now, this would only be for football.
Because nothing says, golden years of college football like competitive balance. Like there's ever been competitive balance in this
really
sport.
Hasn't. There really
Come
hasn't.
on, guy.
They want to have a form of collective bargaining with the Players Association. They would provide college athletes input on rules and compensation, offering antitrust protection. They could utilize a salary cap. There's a lot of things in here that, while they do make sense, I mean, if you want to think that what we're going through now has completely disrupted things, listen, if we can get back, if we can get to a point where there is an association that could allow for some form of collective bargaining, then I think everything, by and large, because nothing is perfect or 100%, but we, by and large, get to calmer waters. The problem we have now, as we know, and I'm not going to get into this topic, but the problem we have now is that we have nothing when it comes to rule. The NCAA fought so hard and squeezed so hard that it lost its grip, period. I don't really like this idea. I understand it in theory, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know that I would fight it, but I don't like it.
Well, it's dumb. 6-team leagues. Or whatever.
Now listen, I don't like that the Southeastern Conference is at 16 or the Big Ten is at 18 or whatever the hell it is. I don't know. But I don't know. I don't know if this isn't better.
No.
It's just different.
Look, the reason that college football is still successful right now is because you still have so many of these geographical ties, and the cultural significance. Like the reason the SEC is so significant is not just because the teams are good on the field. This is all football aside, but these Southeastern Conference schools are mostly in states where there are no pro sports,
right,
or haven't had pro sports until like the 90s, right? Like Tennessee, no pro sports until the 90s. South Carolina, no pro sports. Alabama, no pro sports. Arkansas, no pro sports. Like there's a lot of this, like these football teams and these programs are the premier sporting event of that state in states that don't get represented on like a professional level.
You talked about it. Even
it's
the Bulldogs,
cultural.
man. The Bulldogs dwarf the Falcons in popularity.
Yeah, exactly. They're the most popular show in town in their entire states.
Yeah.
And that's what makes these so successful, commercially so successful. These aren't just games, right? They're cultural, social events. I mean, just go to Williams-Brice and you'll see hundreds, thousands of people that do not go into the stadium.
Right.
But because it is a social and cultural event. And part of that, it gets bigger when South Carolina plays Clemson, when South Carolina plays Georgia, which is one of the reasons why Georgia not being on the schedule is an absolute travesty. Ooh. And that's like already starting to ruin a little bit of that, right? But whether players get paid or not really doesn't matter to that element of college football and that element of college athletics. What this would do would completely take away a lot of that at a foundational level, and then you're turning it into a gimmick, right? Here you still have the Southeastern Conference. It's different. It's not the same, but you still have the same cultural impact you would have without it.
Next week, the SEC and Big Ten have AD level meetings, and I'm curious how much this gets discussed in terms of trying to bypass it. We'll figure that out. Hour 3 coming up.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents that are causing some issues on the roadways. We'll start here in Richland County. We have one on Clemson Road at I-20, another one on Highway 1 at Augusta Road at O'Neill Court, and at North Grampian Hills Road, as well as one on Kelly Mill Road. So Highway 1 at Augusta Road got plenty of accidents along that way, as well as one that just popped up on Augusta Road southbound at I-26. Still have another accident on I-26 westbound after the Broad River Road exit. That's exit 97. You also got one on Sparkleberry Lane at Valhalla Drive and US 378 near I-77. And lastly, in Lexington County, we have one on Crystal Springs Drive at Edmond Highway.
It is 5 o'clock news time on this Tuesday, the 1st of October. Welcome back in. Also, the final hour of the postgame show. Along with Elijah Campbell, I'm Jay Phillips. We appreciate you being with us. Been busy today. A lot of football talk in the first hour with Ryan Brewer. And the bulk of hour number 2 spent discussing the life of Pete Rose, who passed away yesterday at the age of 83. The all-time hits leader, reached base more than 6,000 times in his career.
I don't think I've done anything in my life 6,000 times.
And again, involved in more wins than any professional athlete in North America. That's pretty crazy, man.
That's a really
I did not know that one until today.
Or a record to have.
Yeah. So we've had a busy day. It's also been busy for Gamecock football. Shane Beamer back holding the weekly press conference. Of course, none last week with Carolina being off, but now previewing the Mississippi game, and Lane Kiffin has spoken as well. But first, we'll start with Shane. Not a lot of injury in sight here, but here's a little bit on the big three that have been banged up, that being Sellers, Sanders, and Jared Brown.
Yeah, so that's all I'm going to say about the injuries. And then Pete slipped one in, and now you're going. So I said, I think we're in good shape, I think were the words I used. So Lenoris and Rocket were both out there. They both look good. Were they 100%? I wouldn't say they were 100%, but they both told me they felt great and they look good, and they'll both be able to do even more tomorrow, I would think, as well. And before anybody asked it, Jared Brown was out there today too. So I'll go ahead and let somebody, get an extra question in, but I'll answer in that one as well.
So there you go. Tomorrow night, the conference is doing this around 8 o'clock Eastern, of course, the availability report. I'm going to roll my radio dice and say that they will be listed tomorrow as probable relative to not being listed at all, which means they're full go.
Yes. I firmly believe that.
And if they're not there at all, it's going to be one of those two.
Yeah. I mean, look, if I had to put money on it, I think Lenoris, especially when it comes to Lenoris, right? I think he'll start the game. I feel like 70% that he'll probably start the game. Jared Brown, 75.
Yeah.
Rocket, 75. At least giving it a go. Yeah. The game is so big that I think, if there's any way they can go, I think they will. But
I agree.
They will all appear on the injury report. I would feel pretty confident in saying that.
Yeah.
Or the availability report. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Greg Sankey's calling me right now.
Availability report. I don't mind availability report relative to injury report. What I do mind is that college football is still insisting upon the 2-minute warning being called the 2-minute timeout. Just stop it. Just stop it.
No one's going to do that.
Nobody cares. It's not even a big deal. Like, the only reason you make it a deal is because you make it a deal.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. Like, just don't. It's just.
You've created this bit monster.
There's a term in football that every football fan is accustomed to. It's called the 2-minute warning. It's okay. It'd be like if well, in college, we don't call it a field goal. We call it a 3-point kick. Just call it what it is, man.
It's a 3-pointer, nerd. Just kidding. It's a field goal.
Anyway, all right, I didn't need to go there, so I'm not. Lane Kiffin. Now, listen, we're going to get a lot more into the game throughout the course of the week. That's for certain. But Lane Kiffin speaking in his weekly press conference here on what Ole Miss is working on to try and contain a very successful thus far South Carolina pass rush.
Yeah, very different players types than last week, polar opposite, and then very different schemes too. Kentucky ultra sound, keep the ball in front of you, really big bodies. Stoops built that defense that way, and then I think the addition of the Georgia linebacker was huge for them from a mentality and leadership standpoint. And you saw what they did to us, you saw what they did to Georgia. These guys are built differently. They're more built on speed and twitch, so both present problems.
So, again, very different. And I think, Elijah, you pointed out some of that yesterday, too. Kentucky does have guys. It's almost like the reverse. Kentucky has good guys on the edge. South Carolina seems to have a level above that. Kentucky has, very good players on the interior. South Carolina does, too, but maybe Kentucky's just a little bit better. And you saw what they were able to do. So, again, what do you take from that? But it's going to be interesting to see. One more on here, too, from Coach Lane Kiffin. We've asked, Elijah and we've asked you, the audience, we talked about it with Ryan Brewer today. Does Ole Miss have to come out with a different mental attitude after their loss because of the goals that they've set for themselves? Here's Lane on how they've reacted thus far.
Yeah, I think they were really disappointed. I think they were really upset, really hurt. And I told them today that's a good thing, for guys that in the room that didn't and just went on with their day and, it didn't really hurt. That'll show you. The more you're invested, the more you put in something, you're going to feel different afterwards than somebody that isn't invested and doesn't put all their heart into it. So I think it was a good thing that they struggled so much the last 2 days.
I seriously mean this. I have no idea how it's going to go down. That's why we have athletic events, and that's why we play. But I can't really get away from it, Elijah. I feel like the almost number one storyline is how Ole Miss reacts. Yes, it's going to be about the football that's played. I mean, duh. But you mentioned it. This is a sports cliche. Don't let one loss beat you twice. I'm not predicting that it's going to. In fact, far from it. I'm not, nor am I predicting, well, now Ole Miss is going to come out and beat Carolina by 50. I don't mean it that way either. But I do believe that he finds a way to make them feel like the cornered animal that has only one direction to come at you, and that's just straight into it. Let's see if they do.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the thing, too. I'm sure Ole Miss has looked at a lot of the same numbers that I have, and they've watched the film plenty of times, and they know exactly that you play that game in most instances, you win a lot of the time. You outgain your opponent by almost 2 yards per play each time. You almost always win that game. If you don't commit those stupid penalties in that last drive that Kentucky used to end up getting into the end zone and scoring that game-winning touchdown, you win that game. If you don't fumble the ball in the red zone and you were able to go 3 for 3 the same way Kentucky did in the red zone, you win that game. I think they probably go back to, or at least, if I'm Lane Kiffin, I'm saying, look, you did a lot of things that you could do to win it, but a lot of very avoidable things happened that caused you to lose it. And if you hold South Carolina to barely over 3 yards a carry, I like your chances in this game. If you are, you outgain them by almost 2 yards per play, I like your chances. You just got this, like if you're Ole Miss, you're looking at it as in, this is how we let the game slip. We can't do that for the rest of the season because the margin of error is getting slimmer and slimmer as the season goes on. That's why I don't think there's going to be a ton of mental hang-up as in they're shell-shocked that they don't know what to do with the rest of their season. Mm-hmm. They executed the game plan for the most part, for the exception of a few plays here and there, and football can be won and lost on those margins. I fully understand that, but from a mentality standpoint, I don't think the Kentucky loss breaks them. but I think that can make them prone to shell shock if they do get into Williams-Brice Stadium and they get smacked in the first drive or two of the game.
Yeah, which is, again, coming back to the point you made yesterday, and I think we'll repeat a few times this week, due to them what you did to LSU, maybe they don't make the same adjustments. Yeah. And again, part of the adjustments in the LSU game, of course, was Carolina had to adjust to a second quarterback.
Yeah, and, here's the thing, too. Ole Miss, they did not trail hardly in any of the games they played leading up to it. They barely trailed in the Kentucky game in terms of they never were down by multiple scores, right? It was they're down 10-7 at halftime. They end up retaking a lead before Kentucky took it back. It was never more than a one-score game. But if you get up 2 scores on them early, we have no reason to believe that Ole Miss is mentally tough enough to make that comeback on the road. LSU has some of that because they've had some players that are at least old and experienced that have played on teams that did overcome some of that, right? And LSU had to prove some mental fortitude in that environment to make some of the plays on offense that they did. And, luck aside, officiating aside, they still had to make a lot of plays in that game to win it.
Yeah.
And to their credit, they did. I think there's a narrative about Ole Miss right now that mentally they don't have what it takes to get over that hurdle. And historically speaking, you've done a really good job pointing that out. Historically speaking, they have not overcome those hurdles. It's a little different with a program like Ole Miss that's in this position very rarely in terms of national championship contention or playoff contention, that if they get down multiple scores on the road in a hostile environment, it's a fair assessment to say that you don't know how they're going to handle it. And more likely than not, they handle it poorly.
Yeah. I mean, and we saw it here 15 years ago. I'm not saying that that's going to happen again, but I think you just hit on some of the reasons why I have likened so much of this year's Ole Miss team to that version of Ole Miss. Let's see. I mean, everything's different now.
Football ghosts are very real. Yeah. Program ghosts are definitely real.
They absolutely are. Continuing our integrated media headlines of the day, the Major League Baseball playoffs are indeed underway. And, of course, basically yesterday it started for the Mets and Braves, who split a doubleheader, which got both of them into the postseason. Atlanta winning the nightcap after blowing a lead. They had a 3-0 lead in the first game, and that's what they held on for in Game 2. Atlanta tonight will be in San Diego. As we speak, I'll come back around to the pitching matchup for the Braves. As we speak, 2 games are live. The Tigers are winning in Houston. It's now in the 9th inning. The Tigers have a runner on third, 2 out, but they are up 3-0. Again, it's in Houston, so the Astros have a chance to come to the plate no matter what here in the bottom half. And in Baltimore, Kansas City and the Orioles are scoreless as the O's hit in the bottom of the 5th. Coming up in just a few minutes. In fact, they're doing starting lineups right now. The Mets and Brewers, Game 1 in Milwaukee. And the Braves and Padres, again, tonight out on the coast. The Braves will send A.J. Smith-Shawver to the hill against Michael King, both young righties going at it tonight. All these series, by the way, remain in the one town. They don't do 2 and then 1. So if you earn the hosting site in the wild card series, which is better than the old wild card game, baseball should be a series.
Yes.
So, and if you did not hear, Braves fans, Chris Sale, who was scratched from the start yesterday, has been scratched from the roster. Now, he can be added should the Braves make the divisional series. But Chris Sale did not make the roster. I didn't see if he was going to travel with the team or remain in Atlanta for treatment. I would remain in Atlanta for treatment. He's got back spasms. So I don't know if that means just like 24-hour massage therapy or those electroshock things.
Those things work really well.
I don't know. I don't care, but it's unfortunate. Again, this dude's going to basically be a pitching Triple Crown winner this year. And
you need him.
Yeah. And he can't go. And so much that he can't go that you're like, you know what? We're not even putting him on the roster. So,
which kind of pays, I guess, a little more credence to the theory yesterday that the Braves have known for a while.
They have known. And I think Snit alluded to it. When he pitched in Cincinnati, he lost about 5 miles an hour on velocity, and they knew something was wrong. And they've just been trying to hope against hope, and it didn't work. But they made the playoffs. So there's that. 8:30 tonight, Braves and the Padres. Real quick here, some college news for you. Gonzaga has announced today that they will be joining the new look Pac-12 conference in all sports. Now, they don't play football. But in all sports other than football, which is where are they going to start a football team?
There's no way. That school's way too small to have a football team.
So it's not really all sports.
because it even says here, all sports the school plays. They don't play football. But they are awesome at basketball. And the Pac-12 is adding some very good basketball schools. Again, the 26-27 school year is when they will go. And the University of Texas, El Paso, UTEP, announced today that it will be joining the Mountain West Conference in a couple of years. And finally, Von Miller has been suspended 4 games without pay for violating the NFL's personal conduct policy, eligible to be reinstated when the Bills play the Seahawks October 28. This stems from allegations of domestic violence from last year. Miller had turned himself in on an arrest warrant. He says the allegations are false and overblown, but the NFL says this is what it's going to do about it. So Von Miller will not be part of the Buffalo Bill defense for the next month. And they could probably use him. They got stumped the other day by the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, the Ravens ran all over them.
They did. That's our integrated media headlines of the day. 803-948-8274. Any and all of your home theater needs. There truly is no one better in these parts than my good friends at Integrated Media. Check them out. Come back on the other side with a lot more from what Shane Beamer had to say ahead of the Gamecocks and the Rebels. You're listening to the Postgame Show. How old is your air conditioning system? Do you know? When you go outside, do you look at it and it's all rusty and beat up and you're like, man, this thing's old? Well, there might be a way for you to get a brand new system at absolutely no cost. How, you ask? Oh, I'm glad you did. You work with our friends at AAA Heating and Air. You go to their new website, myoldair.com. You register. You tell them that you've got what you believe is the oldest system in their Midland service area. And for every 100 entries, they're going to draw a winner for a brand new system. It really is just that easy. All of the rules and terms are right there on the website for you. So it's very easy to find it all out. But hey, 1 in 100? I mean, that's pretty good odds. Check it out, myoldair.com, and a new system could be yours from AAA Heating and Air. Welcome back into the postgame show here on a Tuesday afternoon. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell with you. Shane Beamer speaking today ahead of Carolina and Mississippi. That game is at 3:30-ish on Saturday, as Elijah likes to say.
That's right.
And we have
DEE.
pretty much all-day coverage here for you. 10:30 coverage starts. Gamecocks Game Day, sponsored by LexMed Orthopedics. That's from the party lot.
Yeah, you know
That's
the party
sound and
lot.
images.
You know the party lot, Jay Phillips.
That's where our boy Adam Vance is running around with a lampshade on his head.
That's right. On a good day, he'll have a shirt on
But you know what? He's got the lampshade monogrammed. So there's that.
with his initials. Gets accosted everywhere he goes. People are asking you, but Adam, I need to see the initials on your lampshade that you wear on your head in the pregame, parties, the party lot. I feel bad for him. He can't go anywhere. There's not a place Adam Vance can go without being accosted.
Adam, I might get in trouble, but if you would get a lampshade monogrammed and run around your party lot, I will find a way to work sound and images into things subliminally for the next month.
I will volunteer my services as a former security guard at certain music venues and in nightclubs. Yes, I will volunteer my services. Come out of retirement, if you will, to make sure you don't get accosted in public ever again.
Then once Adam's finished running around with the lampshade on his head, we'll go to the network pregame at 12:30. Kickoff again right around 3:30. That's all.
The lampshade will stay on Adam's
Saturday.
head.
That's right. In the meantime, speaking of Saturday and the football portion of things, let's get back into some cuts from Shane Beamer here. Asked today during the press conference after the 3-1 start, what do you think's different about why you guys are feeling better about yourselves?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I'm just giving you a hard time. And it's something that we looked at, there's no question. And I think I mentioned it after the Kentucky game where we knew that we needed to get off to a better start in 2024 against Power 4 teams, especially compared to 21, 22, and 23, where 21 we lost to Kentucky and Georgia to start the Power 4 schedule. 22, we lost to Georgia and Arkansas. 23, we lost to North Carolina and Georgia. So we haven't gotten off to good starts against SEC, ACC teams. And it's something that we looked at, really going back to our summer conditioning, looking at tweaking some things that we did in there in the weight room. Certainly our schedule. I think one thing that we did this year was we got into our preseason schedule, our weekly game schedule. We basically did that the whole month of August, where in years past, I would move practice times around. I would move the days off around where, okay, we've got a 3:30 game. We're going to practice at 3:30 all this week. We play night games. We're going to practice a couple times at night this week. We're going to practice a couple times at noon, whereas this year we treated every week just like our in-season schedule, where during preseason camp back in August, every Monday was an off day just like it is now. Every practice was in the morning just like it is now. And then every Saturday was a scrimmage, and all we did was just change the scrimmage times based on when we were playing Old Dominion and LSU and Kentucky. And hopefully that helped us, and I think it allowed us to get into more of a routine. So I think the biggest thing is, one, we've played well. Two, we've got a veteran team that's done a nice job. And then three, I think just being on a in-season schedule, maybe a little bit quicker, I feel like, helped us, and hopefully we'll continue to that success.
Routine is certainly, I think, a big part of that. And they did add veteran pieces this year, but doing the same thing, creature of habit kind of. I know I'm guilty of that. I just when I'm thrown off or when everything changes, I always just feel a little bit out of sorts. It's okay for the Saturday kick time to be a little bit different, but you want your routine to be just that. I do think that's that's part of it. That's not like, oh, hey, if you just practice at the same time every day, you'll be great. No, there's plenty of schools that do that and probably aren't good, but I do think it matters.
Yeah, that's the one thing about just like athletics in general, is that there is no one-size-fits-all solution. And as a head coach, you kind of have to figure out what flows best with your team. And Shane's always been really open and transparent about what his process is, or what the team's process is in terms of preparation and getting ready for a lot of these games, and how he's kind of evolved since he first came here. It's for it to be his first head coaching job. He's had to learn a lot of things on the fly a little bit and do a lot of trial and error. And this is just one of those things that I think he has kind of come to the conclusion that this works better for at least this year's team, right? That they have found a rhythm somewhere, and that's a fascinating thing that I think is very interesting, that separates different programs. They all operate differently to a degree. Exactly how different is your process than others, and a lot of it is just doing things for the first time as a head coach and figuring out what works.
Yeah.
And I think by now that we're in year 4, I think he's finally gotten the hang of certain, procedural things that lead up to games and preparation of games, and this year is a very interesting application of it.
Speaking of figuring things out, we'll go to our next cut here. The offense looked good, obviously, against an overmatched Akron team, but it certainly had a lot of nice moments against Louisiana State as well. And Robbie Ashford has been taking the helm the last couple of weeks. Lenoris had played well when he was able to go. Shane was asked if the offense kind of figuring out what you want it to look like.
Yeah, I think so. I think every week that's a process, and there's no question we're better at running the ball. There's no question that each week we have to be creative in how we run the ball. There's no question that we've got athletic quarterbacks, so continue to accentuate those positives. You see our receiving core; those guys continue to step up and make plays. So I think it's understanding our personnel even better. Really realizing how we're going to win football games around here without a doubt. And then you mentioned the self-scout. That was critical last week after 4 games to really be able to step back and say, what tendencies do we have, whether it be personnel-wise, formation-wise, that we really need to attack and combat. So, yeah, I think every week you continue to get better. And that'll be the whole key for us, not just on offense, but defense and special teams, that we just continue to get better every single week.
On that note, I'll toss it to Elijah, who asked this next question, but we'll switch to the defensive side. And, again, Ole Miss likes to throw, and they like to play fast.
They do. And we look at the matchup, Ole Miss's offensive line struggled against Kentucky's defensive line. So I think it's very reasonable to say that the defensive line and edge rushers will do their job when it comes to Saturday. But the biggest matchup really on this side of the ball for me is how are South Carolina's corners and safeties going to be able to handle coverage against Ole Miss, whose strength of the team is the variety of weapons they have. They can really apply the true Mike Leach definition of balance, because Trey Harris is a great wide receiver. Jordan Watkins is a really good wide receiver. We know what Juice Wells can do when healthy and on a football field. And we've seen what Cade Prescorn as a tight end can do. I mean, the guy's pretty much worked himself into NFL draft status here with how he's played the last couple of years. So I asked Shane exactly what level of play do you need to see from your secondary against an offense with this many weapons?
Yeah, no, they'll have to play well. We'll have to do a great job tackling, and that's a key for us this week, is we've really got to tackle well. That's one thing I thought Kentucky did a great job of last week, is making one-on-one tackles. And Ole Miss is going to get their yards. They're going to get their carries and catches. We just got to do a great job tackling, not just in the secondary, but all 11 guys on defense, to make sure that those 5-yard gains don't turn into 30-yard gains, and for sure. But certainly the secondary, without a doubt, because they get to going fast, and then there's a miscommunication or somebody doesn't play the right technique and you're giving up touchdown passes over your head, and that's what can't happen. And it's not just the secondary, it's the linebackers and everyone that have to do a great job from a coverage standpoint, but starting with tackling all 3 levels of the defense.
Good stuff from Shane there. We'll have more from Coach as part of the drive around the SEC in just a second. Before we hit the break, Detroit and Houston bottom 9. The winning run is at the plate for the Astros. It is 3-1 now, but there are 2 out. A liner to short left field did not allow a Houston runner to tag to make it 3-2. So 2 outs, but the winning run is at the plate for the Houston Astros. That'll be the first game completed of the 4 wildcard games today in baseball. All right, drive around the SEC next on the Postgame Show.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to report to you that are causing some issues on the roadways. We'll start here in Richland County. Got accident on Clemson Road near Longtown Road. Got a pair on Highway 1 at Augusta Road, one on North Grampian Hills Road, and the other on Kelly Mill Road. Also have accidents on Sparkleberry Lane at Valhalla Drive, US 378 near I-77. And in Lexington County, we have an accident on Crystal Springs Drive at Edmond Highway.
It is Drive Around the SEC time on this Tuesday. Welcome back in. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell with you. Got two screens on right here in the studio. Two of the three teams that I can't stand the most. The Astros have the bases loaded. Jason Hayward, the former Brave, is at the plate. It's still 3-1 Detroit, and the Mets are now getting going in Milwaukee. And Terry Ford's in here. How are your Orioles still scoreless?
1-0 Kansas.
KC up 1-0. Okay. Well, you're still.
Thanks for reminding me.
Well, I don't have I don't have that one on.
Yeah.
I just want Houston and the Mets to lose.
I'm today years old when I realized that Jason Hayward plays for the Astros.
Was an Astro. And
I missed that. And
a line out to first. That's it. Wow, right at him. Boy.
The Tigres.
All right, so game one of the day in the major leagues is over, and Detroit wins in Houston 3-1.
The Detroit Tigers winning a playoff baseball game.
How about that? That's been a while. Drive around the SEC time for you. We'll get back into some sound from Shane Beamer in just a second. Got some good ones this week in the conference. Well, we got a couple. Tennessee at Arkansas is interesting, only because is there any kind of letdown factor with Tennessee right now? I don't expect there to be one.
If there's a letdown factor after a bye week,
I was going to say,
I think you have some institutional issues.
If not letdown factor, I suppose just don't take it seriously enough factor.
That would be more like it,
yeah.
I feel like. Even though.
So not letdown. Auburn goes to Georgia. Look, this is obviously. I mean, this is the big rivalry for. I mean, other than the Iron Bowl for Auburn, obviously, and Florida. But I mean, these two schools do not like one another. Auburn is bad. Georgia has not. Well, I'll correct myself here. We're going to find out if Georgia woke up in the second half at Tuscaloosa the other day. I know they lost the football game, but remember, if all you saw was the score, you'd think, hey, that was a classic. And in a way it was. But it was very much the tale of two halves kind of a game. I mean, it was, 30-7 at halftime?
28-0 to start, 30-7
Yeah, 28-0, 30-7 half. Georgia took the lead at 34-33, only to lose 41-34. But Georgia did not look good in Lexington the week prior. But they won the football game, and that's all that matters. I expect them to beat Auburn, and they're pretty heavy favorites against a bad Auburn team. Just, what is Kirby doing to kick him in the seat this week? Because you got to be careful because, again, hey, halftime we adjusted and really – I'm not going to say – and we should have won. That's not – he'll tell them that. Like, hey, we took the lead, and he's right. Yeah. And we play defense here, and he's right. So you got to kick him in the seat a little bit, but at the same time, you got to praise him for coming back from what looked like, you were getting ready to get boat raced twice. So this is one of those really trying times for a coach. But obviously, Georgia you can't go losing to Auburn.
Oh, no. Not especially this Auburn team that has yet to play a game away from its home stadium, and even inside its home stadium, it's 2-3 with losses to Cal and Arkansas. Yeah. No, you can't lose to this.
So you gotta beat Auburn and start feeling good about yourself. Tennessee's coming around soon enough. You got to go to Oxford. You got to go to Austin. I mean, it's you got to win this game. But you got to. I know I don't mean like style points and whatever and flair, but you do need to look good doing it.
You need to crush them. Yeah. No, you absolutely do need to crush them. I know you only lost by a score against Alabama because of an interception in the end zone. But look, if you do end up losing 3 games this year, style points will matter in your wins in terms of trying to get you into the college football playoff. I do believe there'll be a 9-3 team coming out of the SEC that will play in the college football playoff this year now that it is expanded to 12 teams. But if you're Georgia too, I mean, look, how you progress throughout the season offensively is going to really matter. Well, going into this game against Alabama, we said that, they don't have much of a downfield passing presence. And yeah, it helped when Alabama quits rushing 6 and 7 to the passer every time.
Right.
You watch the second half, all of the big plays that Georgia was able to connect on down the field, Alabama didn't rush more than 4. And when Georgia's in max protect, I think, 6 and 7 off, pass blocking against 4 should get you a clean pocket. Carson Beck was good in a clean pocket, but I think teams are going to watch what Alabama did to Georgia to rattle Carson Beck, and that's put pressure in his face. And really, the numbers when Carson Beck was facing pressure against Alabama were significantly different than they were whenever he had a clean pocket to pass from. And he finally picked him apart late. But there were a lot of things I think Alabama didn't do very well defensively that allowed Georgia to get back into that game. Mm-hmm. Carson Beck will absolutely dissect you up and down the field from about from 0 to 10 yards or 10 to 15 in those intermediate passing ranges. That's where he's at his best. But if Auburn can get some pressure on him, which I don't think they will, full disclosure, I don't think Auburn's defense got it like that. Not like Kentucky, not like Alabama. But if they're able to get some pressure on them and taking advantage of Tate Radlich possibly missing another game, then there is some flaws in Georgia that make them a lot more beatable than they have been the last few years. I think Alabama exposed that to a degree. But here's the thing. Alabama's got a great defensive front, but there are a lot of teams in the SEC that have really good defensive fronts, right? Ole Miss has a really good defensive front. If Ole Miss sees that and they play them later on in the year and you just have a mismatch problem and they're not able to protect Carson Beck or keep him inside a clean pocket, then they are very vulnerable to losing that game on the road to Ole Miss later in the year. Texas is the exact same way. Texas has a mean defensive front. When they have to go play Texas in Austin later this year, that can be a real trip up. You're going to have to be able to put together a resume if you don't make the SEC championship game of having style points attached to a lot of the wins. Right now, the best win on the resume is at Kentucky. Good. Kentucky's a good football team. They just proved how good of a football team they were. But now you got to start applying some style points if you're not going to be able to get some wins on your schedule. Oh, and I even forgot Tennessee. Tennessee, also great defensive.
Yeah.
Like there's a chance they can go 8-4 if some of those issues aren't fixed. And that's obviously worst case scenario. Not saying they're going to do it, but in an era that the resume is going to mean more than ever if you don't make your conference championship game, the games you're supposed to win, it will behoove you to go out there and drop a hammer on top of Auburn, especially a 2-3 Auburn team. Which you
need to go do what you did to Clemson, and I think if you're Georgia, and then that's going to be one that I think the committee will look at and go, oh, okay, because Clemson has started to score points now that they, it's like basically they couldn't score on Georgia, but they scored on everybody else. By the way, the Tennessee game, I mentioned that earlier. Tennessee's a 13.5-point favorite. One more note here in the drive around. We will hear some sound from Shane again on the other side. I'm going to be up against it. But Florida hosts UCF. UCF was humbled by Colorado the other day, and UCF is going into the swamp as 3-point favorites.
Give me Florida.
Florida is going to beat Central. If Florida, listen, this is one. Not must win, right? But I mean, like Florida, this
is a must win.
You gotta win this game
for Billy.
You gotta win this game. Well, for the
Florida
school,
fans probably wouldn't mind him losing and getting canned earlier than later.
UCF did not look good the other day.
They were bad. No,
they're not. They're not good, man.
Colorado shouldn't beat you up on the line of scrimmage.
No, UCF's not very good. I'm sorry. I like Gus, and I like the whole notion of what plucky little UCF and what they're doing and national champs, 5 or 6 years ago or whatever it was. But
That was a good team. That was then. This is now.
yeah, they're not good, man. They're not good. And forgive me for saying this, but I still think there's part of the Big 12 leadership that is going, why do we invite UCF and Cincinnati into our conference?
And Houston.
And Houston. Well, Houston basketball, I'll give you that one.
Yeah. Survival.
Yeah, I know why they did
Yeah.
it. But now that you've added
like,
Utah and the
these guys?
Arizonas and you got Colorado back, it's like
Hey, good for BYU, though.
BYU's killing it, man.
That's the plucky underdog in this conference here. Picked to finish last in a lot of polls.
And I just can't look at BYU that way.
As a plucky underdog?
Nah. BYU still has that name recognition from when I was growing up. I know it's waned a lot since then. Like, you don't remember BYU as a real, but there was a time when BYU churned out nothing but NFL quarterbacks, and they won a national title.
Like, yeah, but I was not alive.
No, you were not.
And none of these players were like a decade.
But that's why I just can't. I can't look at BYU the same way I look at UCF, even if they're supposed to be on the same level, and technically they are. But I just don't look at it that way. That's the drive around the SEC, brought to you by Herndon Chevy. More from Coach Beamer coming up. Welcome back to the postgame show. Jay and Elijah with you. Sorry, I know that's just weird.
No, it's
I can't
not.
help it.
It's called setting the mood.
Is this what all? This is
Jay
Roy
Phillips.
Ayers. The song is called "The Memory," according to my computer in front of me here.
Some juicy memory, sounds like.
Is Roy Ayers? Is this, like a Barry White knockoff kind of a guy, or do we know anything else about the career of Roy Ayers?
Nothing. Nada. Zilch.
And what's
you.
the memory, dude? Because the scene you're setting.
I'm sure it is remembered fondly.
Let's move on.
Jay Phillips tears Achilles trying to pivot out of this one.
I knew that hurt.
Out for the season.
That's right.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Let's move on.
Someone get the stretcher. Someone get the stretcher.
Is there more?
It's bad.
Is there more parity? Cut 16, please, on the Shane Beamer list. Is there more parity right now across college football? Shane Beamer asked that question today.
No, I think there's more parity. I think certainly you can change your roster around pretty quickly. I mean, Rocket certainly has helped our running game. And Spencer came in and helped our offense in the 2 years he was here. But if you look at Ole Miss, I mean, Lane said it after last season. They lost to Georgia, Alabama, and he said that we needed to get better on the line of scrimmage. That's the difference between Ole Miss and some of those other teams. So what they do, they went out and got Princely, the defensive end from Florida, who it seems like he's been in the SEC forever. I can remember going into his high school because his high school in Texas was my recruiting area when I was at Oklahoma. So I'm coaching at Oklahoma, and we were trying to recruit Princely to Oklahoma. And then he goes to Florida, and he's a heck of an edge rusher. Now he's at Ole Miss. Last year when, Nolan at Texas A&M is a dude, and now he's no longer at Texas A&M. He's now at Ole Miss. And then you see the fact that, they've brought in 2 offensive linemen that were at Washington and had a great year at Washington. So they've changed their roster around quickly at Ole Miss, particularly on the line of scrimmage, where you don't look at them and say, well, they're going to struggle against the top teams in the league. Ole Miss is a team that, in my mind, can beat anybody in this league. And then, Georgia is the defending or preseason pick, I guess, to win the league. And you saw what Kentucky did with them and how close that game was. So I certainly think in today's time, there is more parity, and there's a lot of really, really good football teams in this league. And every single Saturday, you have to play really, really well in order to give yourself a chance to be successful.
That's really the word parity is really the primary reason, beyond the obvious, but from a competitive standpoint, and money, of course, is number one. But that's why we have an expanded playoff. There are too many college presidents and chancellors knowing they've okayed greater expenditure for football only to see, very little in terms of the payback. I mean, yeah, you get some good wins here and there, but now if you're not making one of the premier bowl games, and even now schools that are making some of these so-called premier bowl games still have opt-outs. Florida State looking in your direction, which was whatever. So there is a lot more parity. Now, some will also say, yeah, it's still going to be the same schools. And, yeah, it probably is, man. I mean, is this the year Oregon finally breaks through? They're good.
They're really good.
Michigan finally got one last year. It feels like Michigan's a national power, and they are, but they're not a championship-winning national power. But who is these days? Bama? Georgia got there too. I get it. They went back-to-back. But before that, Georgia had not won a national title in 40 years.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's I think there's probably more parity from across the top of college football, right? And I think we've gone over the course of the last decade and a half having the idea that 4 or 5 teams could win it to maybe 6. I think we're probably at 6 or 7. I mean, I think you can go up and down the list in a tournament setting and say about these 6 or 7 teams can possibly win the national championship on neutral fields.
I mean, even Ohio State, help me out, 15? 14?
Yeah, it was 15.
15.
Yeah, the first year of the playoff. Yeah. And 2014 football season, January of 2015.
Yeah, well, 14 football season.
But here's the thing, too. For a long time, people didn't think there was a need for an expanded playoff during the BCS era until somebody got jobbed, right? Or, the best thing to ever happen to college football in the playoff era was 4-seed Ohio State beating number 1 seed Alabama en route to that championship that you just alluded to, because it validated the necessity of a playoff, right? I think one of the greatest things to happen in college football, despite its controversy and the fallout from it, was Florida State getting snubbed this past year. Yeah, it sucked for Florida State, but you know what that did? That validates the necessity of a 12-team college football, and that's a perfect example as to the parity that has kind of grown in the sport. It's never going to be like college basketball, where you have like 10 teams that can win the national title, and you have these miraculous runs where a team that's like a 10 seed goes to a national championship game. Like, you're not going to get Butler and Brad Stevens in college football. I don't think you're ever going to get that. But you're going to get a team that maybe is 5th or 6th all year long to be able to sneak into the championship picture and be able to
would an Ole Miss right now
on the field.
Would an Ole Miss right now sort of qualify as that Butler?
No. If you're in the SEC, you'll never be a Butler. If you have the resources these schools do and funnel the money that they do into these programs, you will never be considered a Butler.
Yeah.
But you can be considered an NC State from the 80s.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to think who fits that bill, and I guess that'd have to be
in
one
FBS
of those.
football, it'd have to be a G5 school.
Yeah, it'd have to be a G5, and I agree with you. I just don't think they could win 3 straight games.
No. They will win one day.
Yeah.
Well, it will happen one day.
I mean, they might.
And it's going to be one of the best days in the history of the sport.
They might.
I don't think it happens this year, but it can happen one day. Or maybe it does happen this year.
Man, I mean, Boise can play. Memphis can play.
I mean, Ashton Jeanties ran for over 800 yards and 13 touchdowns, and he's only played 3.5 games. He sat out an entire half against Portland State and didn't score a touchdown in the game.
Good stuff today. Thanks to Ryan Brewer. Good stuff from Coach Beamer. We'll do it all again tomorrow. And go Braves tonight. See ya. I want to tell you about our friends at the Joint Chiropractic Centers, 4 of them across the Midlands. You know, chiropractic care can help you maintain your overall health. It can help fix problems, and regular chiropractic adjustments make it easy to maintain and prevent reoccurring problems. And that's what local owners Janet and Bob Keene are in business for, to help you feel better. And listen to this, too. If you're traveling to out-of-town games and you've got an issue and need a chiropractic adjustment, you can be seen at any of the hundreds of the Joint locations across the country. Since you'll be in the Joint system, a new doctor can access your records to see your treatment history. So no hiccups along the way. And again, if you've been bothered by back, neck, shoulder, or joint pain, get back in the game at the Joint. A quick initial visit, just $29. You can be in and out quickly, no appointments, no worries about insurance. Monday through Friday, 10 to 7, Saturday, 10 to 4. Harbison Forest Drive, Roberts Branch off Killian, Sunset Boulevard. That's where the Joint locations are in Columbia. You don't have to feel bad to feel better at the Joint.